Second day. Get up. How dare you still be sleeping in the alpha's bed? The harsh voice pierced through Alyssa's dreams like a needle through silk. She hurriedly covered her naked body with the bedsheet. When she saw who it was, her pain began to rise again. It was Hera, Ezekiel's mother, who loathed her even more than Ezekiel did. Upon noticing her state, Hera's face creased into a deep frown. "Why are you crying?" she said with disgust. "Ezekiel is your husband, your mate, your alpha, so you must accept everything he does to you without complaint, for that is your duty." Alyssa silently dressed herself, unable to refute her. She had to get up and do the housework, or her humiliation would not stop for the day. But Hera's humiliation continued. "Enough. My son is so unlucky that the moon goddess chose you as his mate. Now, hurry up and get dressed. You must work now. If my precious grandson's birthday is ruined due to your laziness, I will make sure Ezekiel punishes you," she ordered, giving Alyssa one last disdainful look before leaving the room. The grandson Hera spoke of was the son of Ezekiel's sister Emma. Not long after she was bound to Ezekiel, his sister Emma found her fated mate and they tied the knot. It didn't take long for her to be pregnant, and tomorrow is the child's first birthday. Alyssa sighed deeply and stood up from the bed shakily, as her legs still haven't healed from the earlier event. She entered the closet and immediately changed into a pair of trousers and a t-shirt. She had no time to wash up because she didn't want Sheila to call on her for the second time. She knew what would happen next if she delayed much longer. After putting on her clothes, she set to work immediately. After stepping into the midst of the other servants, she immediately heard the soft whispers and noticed the disgusted stares she got from them. "She's here finally, back to her place. Look at what she's putting on." A soft snicker followed after that statement. "I wonder what the alpha sees in her to make her his bedmate." Someone whispered, making a sad smile appear on her face. Not even the servant would believe that she was his mate, with the way Ezekiel, his lover, and his family openly treated her. Sharing a bed with the alpha can never get you a higher status. I mean, look at her. She's just a weak whore that's beneath us mere servants. Another one muttered, and the rest of them burst out laughing. Alyssa bowed her head silently, trying to hold back her pain and anger. She took deep breaths as a way to calm herself down. She knew nothing would ever come out of picking a fight with them. How could she win when she was unable to make a sound to defend herself? She could only ignore them and continue with the work assigned to her. After working endlessly for several hours, they were finally done with the preparations. Emma wanted it to be a grand event, so it took them more time and effort to set the place up. Alyssa wanted to retire back to her room and take a small nap before the event fully began, when a servant suddenly passed by her, roughly shoving her aside in the process. As a result of her violent push, Alyssa lost her balance and fell hard on the bare floor. She held her back in panic, hoping her baby wasn't hurt. Instead of apologizing, the servant mocked her. "Oh, look, the mute can't even cry out when she falls," her words drawing cruel laughter from the others. "What's wrong, Luna? Cat got your tongue?" Realizing that the maid had done it on purpose, rage exploded in Alyssa's chest. She could tolerate their daily insults and humiliation, but endangering her baby? Never. She stood up and walked towards the servant. Before the servant could react, Alyssa grabbed her shoulder, spun her around, and slapped her with all the force of her pent-up anger, sending the woman staggering backward. The maid clutched her aching cheeks and widened her eyes. She didn't expect Alyssa to fight back. "How dare you hit me?" she screamed loudly and said, raising her hand angrily. Just as she was about to fight back, she suddenly stopped in midair. Alyssa noticed the trembling of fear in her eyes. "Alpha Ezekiel." She immediately lowered her head and said respectfully, "Leave." Ezekiel ordered in a low voice, and she ran away immediately. Alyssa turned to stare at Ezekiel in surprise, wondering why he had chased the servant off instead of watching others humiliate her like he used to before. She searched his eyes, and for a brief moment she thought she saw a flicker of concern there. Could he finally be how good she was? "You," he said, as he suddenly gripped her shoulder harshly, pulling her towards him. She couldn't even make a groan, even though she felt she could slump at any moment under his violence. "He's with an alpha wolf, whose power was 10 times stronger than a wolfless omega like her. Don't get any delusions. Today's my nephew's birthday and I want everything to be perfect. I expect you to do as you always do. Stay out of my sight and avoid drawing any attention towards you. I hope I've made myself clear? He asked as he tightened his hold on her shoulder. Hearing this, Alyssa realized she had been naive again. How many times would she have to learn this lesson? Always, again and again, to search for warmth in those cold eyes, to imagine tenderness in that harsh voice. Each time she thought she had learned her lesson, yet here she was, heartbreaking anew. A soft sob escaped her lips as she nodded. She could still remember how he used to look at her, how his eyes once held tenderness instead of contempt. Those memories now felt like shards of glass in her chest, cutting deeper with each breath. He let out a dismissive humph before releasing her, as if even touching her had become distasteful. Alyssa watched him walk away, his broad shoulders growing smaller with each step. His cold back seemed to be what he had left her the most since they were mated. Ezekiel always cherished his family, but that didn't include her. Once again, her eyes fell on her flat belly. The memory of how she lost her first baby before was still vivid. What about this time? Emma was a well-known lady, and even with her horrible character, she still managed to gather rich and powerful allies from everywhere she went. Alyssa was standing in a far corner watching silently as the whole family gathered happily. Everyone looked at the stars of the day with delight. Alyssa's eyes were filled with envy as she watched Emma seated closely next to her husband, with their child in his arms. She had everything Alyssa had ever dreamed of, a loving husband and family. Alyssa thought of her own pregnancy, wondering what it would feel like to be finally able to carry her baby in her arms. As she was deeply immersed in her thoughts, she suddenly heard her name being called. Emma had waved at her to offer her a drink. It made Alyssa finally visible to the guests, but no one would know she was actually Ezekiel's Luna. Alyssa had been used to Emma liking to command her like a queen, but she didn't expect her quality to be low like this when she whispered at her ears. "Alyssa, you must be very jealous now, right?" Alyssa quickly glanced at her smug expression, knowing there wasn't going to be anything nice from her mouth. She wanted to leave, but Emma gripped her hand, holding her back. "I bet you'd never get such a beautiful moment like this," she began. Alyssa balled her hands but couldn't stop shivering in anger. She knew exactly how much Alyssa had suffered when she was forced to give up her first child, but she just didn't want to miss any chances to humiliate her. "Trust me, no one would want a mute like you as a family. You'd better give up early and set my brother free." Emma's words about her previous pregnancy struck a raw nerve. She didn't want to put up with Emma's vitriol anymore. Alyssa's hands moved decisively in the air, her gestures sharp with anger. "If you're so concerned about your brother's happiness, why don't you ask him directly instead of whispering threats to me?" A cold smile spread across Emma's face as she watched those desperate movements. "Fine," she spat. "I'll make sure you understand just how unwanted you are." She turned to Nicholas, her voice suddenly sweet with poisoned honey. "Brother, when will you divorce and then marry Cindy? Our pack needs a more decent Luna and a strong heir, not a mutinous heir." The words struck like physical blows. Alyssa's hands clenched into fists, nails digging crescents into her palms. She wanted to scream that her muteness wasn't genetic, that she hadn't been born this way. The words burned in her throat, useless as always, but when her eyes met with Ezekiel's warning gaze, she immediately withdrew, and that made Emma smirk more at her. "Her condition isn't hereditary, so there's no way any offspring from her would have her condition," Ezekiel suddenly said, making Alyssa stun at her spot. Emma also opened her mouth in shock. It's the second time he's protected her today. For one wild moment, hope fluttered in Alyssa's chest, but then his voice hardened to steel. "But I will never let a weak and wolf-free Omega like her bear my children," he continued, adding that Alyssa's expectations were once again dashed. Emma's wicked face smiled again. She turned to Alyssa smugly, as if to say, "Don't get your hopes up. My brother will never accept you." So that was his true heart, wasn't it? He still hated to have a child with her. Then what about the child she's carrying now? Will they do the same horrible thing to it again? Alyssa didn't remember how she went through the party as her whole heart was worrying about the future of her baby. The next morning she stood in front of the mirror, a pale reflection staring back at her. Her eyes were dark and swollen. Obviously, she wasn't able to have a good sleep. She shook her head with a bitter smile and quickly got dressed. It was a new week and she had somewhere to go. She curved her lips as she stared at the huge signboard of a cafe. Heaven Cafe was the only place in this city that could help distract her from all of her problems back at home. She managed to find herself a job here. Alyssa? Alyssa heard her name being called the moment she entered the cafe. Her smile widened when she saw Lily walking towards her with her arms opened wide for a hug. "I missed you so much," she muttered as she embraced Alyssa tightly. "Seriously? I was only gone for a day." Alyssa told her with sign language and Lily immediately understood. "A day? It felt more like forever. Do you know how hard it was for me to manage this cafe all on my own yesterday?" Lily pouted at her. "So you didn't miss me, just the work I was supposed to be doing?" Alyssa joked and she smiled softly. "You got what I mean." "Well, now I'm back so you don't have to miss my service anymore." Alyssa signed to her, playing along with her joke. And then they both burst out laughing. Lily was the only genuine friend Alyssa had made after joining the Moonstone Keepers pack. She's a gorgeous and caring woman. Even though she wasn't much older than her, she cared for Alyssa like a big sister would. She even learned sign language for her. She wasn't that good at it, but she still tried to understand Alyssa. Time with Lily was always comfortable and happy. In the blink of an eye, the morning passed and the customers had filled the cafe to the brim. Alyssa received an expedited order for delivery when Lily was busy attending to other customers. The address seemed familiar, but it wasn't until Alyssa arrived that her heart nearly stopped. It was Ezekiel's company. Her hands trembled on the motorcycle handlebars. How come she didn't notice that earlier? Ezekiel wouldn't be happy to see her here, as he had warned her before not to be in the same space with him whenever they were in public. His company was a no-go area for her. She wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't supposed to enter his space in public. For a moment, she considered turning back. But the thought of causing trouble for the cafe where everyone had been so kind to her made her hesitate. Besides, a small, hopeful part of her heart whispered that this might be her only chance to see where Ezekiel spent his days. What did his office look like? Did he keep any photos on his desk? Would there perhaps be even one small reminder of her in his professional space? "I'll just drop off the coffee and leave," she told herself firmly, trying to squash that dangerous spark of hope. "He'll never even know I was here. Just deliver it quickly and go, that's all." She took in a deep breath and walked into the building. The receptionist kindly directed her to his office. "I'll leave it at the door," she thought again, her heart racing. "Just set it down quietly and slip away. He doesn't need to see me. He doesn't need to know." But then Cindy's voice pierced through the door, stopping her in her tracks. "How long should I wait, Ezekiel?" Her voice sounded like a scream. "I'm tired of seeing that woman having my rightful place. You're mine, and it was supposed to be us getting married." "Mine?" Alyssa couldn't help her temper at hearing this word. Was that how they called each other? But it was supposed to be a word reserved for mates. How did she have the guts to claim him as hers? "He's mine!" Alyssa screamed in her mind, but was he? Her heart sank as my hand reached her neck. Ezekiel hadn't given me her mark because he found it disgusting to fully claim her as his mate. She somehow pushed the door open a bit, so as to see how would Ezekiel react to Cindy's complaint. She wished she hadn't done this. Then she wouldn't see Ezekiel just pulling Cindy closely towards him in a loving manner that he'd never done to her. "You know my marriage with her means nothing," he said before landing a soft kiss on her hair. "It's only because of my father's dying wish. You are always and forever the only one in my heart." Tears burned in Alyssa's eyes as reality crushed her last desperate hopes. How many nights had she lain awake, imagining he might one day look at her with even a fraction of such love? How many times had she told herself that if she just tried harder, was more patient, more understanding, he might eventually see her as more than an obligation? Before she could retreat into the shadows where she belonged, Cindy's sharp eyes spotted her. "Alyssa, The name rang out like an accusation, dripping with false surprise. Alyssa was panicked when Ezekiel turned to look at her. "How do I escape from this now?" she asked herself. "What are you doing here?" His voice was mad and his eyes were red. Alyssa had never seen him this angry before. She bowed her head in fear, not knowing what to answer. "Alyssa, I never expected to see you here." Cindy's high-pitched voice resounded as she walked toward Alyssa. "Did you come to see your husband?" Each word dripped with deliberate provocation, and Alyssa could read the malicious intent clearly in Cindy's eyes. Her heart burned with anger. She knew exactly what Cindy was doing, trying to humiliate her, to show her place as an unwanted wife. The worst part was knowing there was nothing she could do about it. All she could do was hand over the coffee order. Alyssa's hands shook as she tried to set down the coffee order, but Cindy snatched it away. "Oh, you were just delivering our order." Cindy snorted and arrogantly grabbed the coffee from her before walking back toward Ezekiel. "Relax, baby. You don't have to get angry at her. She was just doing her job." She smirked as she rubbed her hand seductively on Ezekiel's chest, not minding Alyssa's presence. The casual intimacy of the gesture made Alyssa's stomach turn. Worse was watching how quickly Ezekiel calmed at Cindy's touch, his anger melting into tenderness. It was like watching everything she'd ever wanted but could never have played out before her eyes. "You spoil me too much, even to the extent of neglecting your wife," she complained, feigning sympathy for Alyssa. Alyssa knew she was enjoying how tormented she felt at that moment. Alyssa couldn't help but look at Ezekiel, searching for any sign that he cared about her suffering. But his eyes remained fixed on Cindy as if she were the sun and moon combined. The complete dismissal of her presence hurt more than any physical blow. Why do I still hold the stupid illusion that he would love me one day? I should have already learned that I had no opportunity to win his heart when it only belonged to Cindy. Alyssa asked herself painfully. She decided to leave, but Cindy called out her name. "Wait, you forgot to take your tip." She picked up her purse and brought out a few dollar bills before stretching them towards her. Alyssa stared at the money quietly. It was too much to be offered as a tip. Was she trying to humiliate her? She shook her head, indicating that she didn't want it, and that only made Cindy grin evilly. "Why don't you want it? I'm sure you badly need it to cater for yourself. Isn't that the reason you're working at that small cafe despite being the alpha's mate?" Alyssa balled her fists angrily, attempting to retort, but held herself back because she knew it wouldn't make any sense to her. They never took her in the eyes. "Just take the damn tip and leave." Ezekiel's harsh voice suddenly resounded in the office, giving Alyssa a jolt. Did he hate seeing her at his workplace so much? She managed to hold her tears and forced a smile before collecting the money. I was about to leave, but his voice stopped her again. "Remember your position, Alyssa," he voiced out harshly. "Don't delude about things that don't belong to you and dare not to break my rules again, or else I'll make sure you pay for it." She nodded silently, though her heart was shattering into pieces. Only when she was outside did she finally let the tears fall, grateful for the heavy rain that masked them. The downpour soaked through her clothes, but she barely noticed, too consumed by the pain in her chest. Through her tear-blurred vision, she didn't see the dark figure that suddenly appeared in her path. Her motorcycle swerved sharply on the wet pavement. The world spun violently, and then pain exploded through her body as she hit the ground. The physical agony was intense, but it was nothing compared to the terror that gripped her heart as she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Her hands instinctively moved to protect her stomach, even as her vision began to fade. She tried to scream for help, but no sound came out, her muteness betraying her once again when she needed her voice the most. "Please," she begged silently, desperately as consciousness slipped away. "Someone help me. I can't lose my baby. Not my baby, too." When Alyssa regained consciousness, she found herself in an unfamiliar environment. She blinked severally as she tried to get used to the bright light in the room. She looked around only to find out that she was in the hospital. How did I get here? The last thing I remembered was falling off my bike, and... She panicked immediately when the memory hit her. She touched her belly immediately like she would be able to feel anything. "My baby!" She thought to herself anxiously. The door to her ward opened and Lily walked in. "You're awake," she muttered happily and at the same time in a worried tone. "What happened to my baby? Is it?" Alyssa signed to her anxiously, not able to complete the question. "Don't worry, the baby is okay," Lily assured, and Alyssa heaved a huge sigh of relief. She didn't know what she would have done if she lost this one too. "Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? Why did I have to find it out after you almost lost your life?" Lily asked, disappointment laced in her voice. "I just found out about it and was planning to tell you today," Alyssa answered by signing in hand language, and Lily nodded in understanding. "What happened? Why were you driving in the rain in your condition? Don't you know how dangerous it is?" she asked worriedly. Alyssa sighed deeply and explained all that happened earlier to her. "What? And you allowed them to treat you that way?" Lily asked angrily after she was done. "What would you have me do? Fight them?" Alyssa asked back, while Lily sighed again. "Now that you're in the hospital, he didn't even bother to come check up on you, despite him being the cause of it. Don't you think you're enduring too much?" Lily asked, and Alyssa bowed her head, filled with pain. "It would be much better if you abort this baby and divorce him. He clearly doesn't want you, and he has always been reminding you that he would never want any child with you. Remember what happened the last time. He doesn't deserve to be a father," Lily reminded. Alyssa was silent for a moment, thinking about what she had just said. Lily was right. Ezekiel never loved her and always saw her as a burden. It would be better for them both if they finally go their separate ways. "I will divorce him, but I can't have an abortion?" Alyssa told her. "Alyssa, how do you plan to raise the child on your own? And do you think he and his mistress will let you go with his baby alive in your belly?" she asked in concern. "I'll work hard to raise it alone, and I'll never disclose my pregnancy to him. I can't let him keep controlling my life. This baby is the only reason I want to keep on going," Alyssa answered. "All right," Lily muttered as she nodded in understanding. "I support your decision. You'll definitely make a very good mother," she muttered, making Alyssa smile softly. She stretched out her arms and pulled her into a tight hug. "Thank you so much, Lily." When Ezekiel returned home, he was really surprised to meet the house in the same way it was in the morning before he left for work. Normally, Alyssa always makes sure to clean up everywhere, even though it was cleaned earlier, and he always gets home to see his food already prepared. Today, it was different. There was no dinner, and everywhere was a mess. It made him both shocked and enraged. He suspected that Alyssa didn't do the needful because of her job at that stupid cafe. He had never liked how close Alyssa was to Lily or any other wolves. He wanted her to be the lonely person she had always been. "She doesn't deserve any friends." "Alyssa," he called out angrily, and Alyssa emerged from her room the moment she heard his voice. His eyes softened immediately when he noticed the bandages wrapped around her body. He was tempted to ask what had happened to her, but he was quick enough to hold himself back. He doesn't care about her, and he would be damned to give a fuck if something bad had happened to her. "You're home, and the house is still a mess," he uttered loudly, making her ears itch. Alyssa stared at him quietly, not bothering to explain what had happened, and that only enraged him more. You have to quit that lousy job of yours and cut off ties with that wench you call a friend," he ordered in a bossy manner. Alyssa acted like she didn't hear what he had just said and walked into her room, surprising Ezekiel. This was the first time she was acting like this towards him, like he didn't exist to her. Moments later, she returned with a file and handed it over to Ezekiel. Ezekiel stared at the file, wondering what it was. He eyes her briefly before opening it and pulling out the paper in it. To his astonishment, it was a divorce agreement. With sign language, she told him, "I've thought about it deeply, and I think now is the best time to finally honor your wishes. Let's end this marriage. Let's divorce." "I've thought about it deeply, and I think now is the best time to finally honor your wishes. Let's end this marriage. Let's get a divorce," Alyssa told him. His dark and hooded eyes were filled with shock as he stared at the divorce papers, but it was just for a few seconds. The surprise in his eyes immediately changed into fury. "Are you cheating on me?" he suddenly asked. Alyssa stared at him in surprise. not expecting such a question from him of all people. Is he trying to pull a prank on me or what? She asked herself as she scrutinized him only to realize that he was dead serious. Seriously? Alyssa scoffed and shook her head slowly. After giving him what he had always wished to have, the first thing that left his mouth was such a dumb question. Please sign the papers quickly so we can register our divorce. She told him curtly with hand sign language as she wasn't in the mood to answer his questions. She was about to leave when he suddenly pulled her back harshly, making her stumble, but she was quick to regain her composure. Who the fuck do you think you are to walk out on me? He asked as he tightened his hold on her weak arm. Alyssa's eyes widened in shock as she didn't expect him to suddenly get violent on her. She grimaced in deep pain since she already had an injury there due to the accident that occurred earlier today. You're hurting me, she told him, but that only made him tighten his grip on her. I asked you a question, and you have the guts to try and walk out on me? He asked, still not letting go of her. Seeing that he was hell-bent on hurting her, she decided to do something instead of crying like she used to. She used all of her might to pull herself out of his hold. He wasn't expecting her sudden movement, so that made him stumble forward a bit. By the time he regained his composure, the look in his eyes had gone darker. It looked like he could kill any moment, but Alyssa didn't let that scare her. She was done with him manipulating and hurting her. She wouldn't let him have his way ever again. You've finally grown some balls. Who gave them to you? Your lover? Ezekiel asked. You're a fucking hypocrite, she told him with a scoff. Alyssa? He called out in a warning tone, but she didn't stop. All the time we've been married, you've never been loyal to me. I know that my marriage to you stopped you from getting married to Cindy, but it wasn't my fault. I didn't ask to be mated to you. All these years together, I've tried to be the perfect wife and mate to you, but you never saw me as someone worth your affection. Is it because I'm a mute? No. Because I'm a weak omega with no family? No. It's because I love you. You only treat me this way because you know how much I loved you and how much I was willing to sacrifice my happiness for you. His gaze softened when he noticed the mess Alyssa was in. Tears were at the corner of her eyes, ready to pour out, but she didn't care. It was only a matter of time before he would turn back to the beast that he is, so she had to let everything out of her chest, quick. This was the first time Ezekiel was seeing such a huge outburst from Alyssa, and it really surprised him. She had always been really obedient to him like a loyal dog, but now that she wants to sever their ties, it made him angrier. Well, not anymore. I can't keep suffering just so you can accept me. Sign the divorce papers so you can finally be with the one you truly love, she told him with sign language. Why? So you can go to your lover? He asked, his soft gaze gradually changing back to how it was before, just like Alyssa had expected. Alyssa smiled softly and drew close to him. I've always been faithful to you while you've been spending your time with that whore, she told him in sign language. His eyes turned darker than it already was, and he gripped her chin harshly. Who are you calling a whore? He asked with gritted teeth. Alyssa kept mute and stared at him dead in the eye, unfazed about the whole situation. Seeing that she wasn't backing down like she used to, he got frustrated and pushed her away. Luckily, she landed on the soft sofa behind her. He sighed deeply and rubbed his face as a way to calm himself. I don't know what has suddenly gotten into you, and I don't really care. I'll just pretend like I never understood everything you just told me. Well, even though I agree to divorce you, no one would dare look your way. No sane guy wants a mute for a wife, he reminded. Then let me leave this hell of a marriage. I'm not interested anymore, Alyssa told him. Really? You're still hell-bent on leaving, he muttered as he chuckled angrily while she nodded at his words. Fine. I won't hold you back, but first, I want you to compensate me for everything I have provided for you all through our years of marriage, he ordered with a smug look on. Alyssa nodded in understanding and brought out her phone. She opened her bank app and sent back all the money he had been transferring to her since when they first got married. His smug look vanished immediately. He saw the money that had been transferred to him. He was really surprised to see it intact. Alyssa had never touched one penny from it. That was the main reason she was working at Lily's cafe. "Will you sign the divorce agreement now?" she asked using sign language. Ezekiel could see how impatient she was to leave him, and that only made him angrier. He stared at her with bloodshot eyes for a brief moment and then stormed out of the house, leaving her standing alone in the living room, filled with confusion as to why he doesn't want to sign the divorce agreement. Ezekiel got into his car and drove off immediately, as he couldn't stand being in the same room as she was anymore. She wanted to divorce him after these long years. Why? Was she actually cheating on him? That thought made him angrier, and he took his anger out on his car by driving with high speed. No cop dared to stop him as he drove past the speed limit because they recognized the car to be their Alpha's. Since she's hell-bent on divorcing him, that means there's someone pushing her to do it. He thought about Lily, and then it made sense to him. Alyssa wouldn't have dared to talk back to him before, but since the day she came in contact with Lily, she slowly started to change. There's no way he would let her get what she wanted. He wanted her to suffer badly for all the years he had wasted on her, and he isn't done yet. She had to suffer more, and he will only let her go when he's satisfied. For now, he needed to let her know that he owns her, and to do that, he needed to teach her a big lesson. He slowed down his car and dialed his secretary's phone number. After a few rings, his secretary picked up. He instructed his secretary to reclaim the land Lily's cafe was located. He wanted to see how she would be able to survive when she has no source of income anymore. She would undoubtedly run back to him, and he wouldn't waste any time in punishing her for trying to run away from him the next day. Heaven Cafe. After Ezekiel left the house last night, Alyssa never set eyes on him again. She knew where he had spent the night, but she didn't care anymore. She had finally made the decision to end her marriage with him. So whatever he does with his life is none of her business any longer. She was at the cafe with Lily, just lazing around as there were no customers at that moment when they heard a loud revving sound. She looked outside only to see a fancy-looking sports car entering the driveway. Alyssa sighed deeply when she realized who owned the car. The sports car was Ezekiel's gift to Cindy on her last birthday. She knew that because Cindy never failed to show it off at every given opportunity she had. After she had parked the car, Cindy emerged out of it, wearing a fancy-looking short dress and heels to match. She really looked like a model. It was no surprise that someone like Ezekiel would fall deeply in love with her. "What is that bitch doing here?" Lily asked with a deep frown on her face when she saw Cindy. Alyssa knew what she had come to do, immolate her as always while keeping on an innocent face. She catwalked into the building, her hips moving side to side as she walked. "Alyssa." She called out with a fake smile when she laid her eyes on her. "What do you want?" Lily asked her as she stood in front of Alyssa like a human shield ready to defend her. Whoa, easy. What's up with the defensive stance?" Cindy asked in amusement. "Why are you here, Cindy?" Lily asked again, more serious than the first time. "To buy a cup of coffee, of course," she answered. "Really? That's what you came here for?" Lily asked again, her tone filled with disbelief. "Why else would I be at this cafe?" she asked back. Lily stared at her silently, trying to see through her, while Cindy gave her a fake, innocent smile. Alyssa knew that there was no way to stop her from getting what she wanted, so she signaled to Lily that she would go get her order. Lily tried to stop her, but Alyssa gave her a small, reassuring smile, so Lily sighed and let her do what she wanted to. "How would you like your coffee?" Lily asked her. "Why can't the person preparing it ask me the question?" Cindy asked back, irritating Lily the more. Lily was about to retort when Alyssa shook my head, indicating that she should hold back. Lily grumbled under her breath, angry that Alyssa let Cindy treat her the way she does, not knowing how hard Alyssa was trying to hold back. Alyssa knew what would happen if she insulted or attacked Cindy. She didn't want Ezekiel to unleash his wrath on Lily. That was the only reason she let Cindy walk over her. "I want it with little sugar, no milk, and really hot." Alyssa arched her brows, wondering why she would order her coffee that way when she loved sugary things. Alyssa held her tongue, deciding not to ask any questions, and got to work. She prepared the coffee the way she wanted it and served it to her on a small tray. Cindy took a large sip and spat out everything immediately. Alyssa wasn't able to react on time, so the contents splattered all over her face and clothes, drenching her body. Since it had already been in Cindy's mouth, it wasn't as hot as the remaining ones in the mug. "What the fuck?" Cindy screamed out as she fanned her mouth. Alyssa, on the other hand, stood at her spot, filled with shock at Cindy's sudden reaction. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Lily asked as she rushed over to Alyssa's side. "Are you okay?" she asked her as she helped Alyssa wipe the coffee dripping from her face. Alyssa's anger was slowly building. She tried to keep herself calm. She couldn't put the lives of both her unborn baby and Lily in danger, all because a spoilt bitch. "Sorry, I didn't realize that you were there," Cindy uttered as she sent Alyssa a smug smile. "Really? You didn't do this on purpose?" Lily asked back. "I'm not at fault. I don't know why she had to make the coffee so hot and bitter. I would have hurt my mouth if I hadn't spat it out," Cindy replied. "Weren't you the one that ordered it that way?" Lily asked again as she attempted to lunge at her, but Alyssa held her back. "I did? When?" Cindy asked with a small chuckle. "I guess the issue you have with your voice is slowly affected both of your ears, because I never and would never order my coffee that way," Cindy mocked. "Lily, a word of advice. You should limit the way you associate with her because she is clearly affecting you in the wrong way," she muttered. Alyssa balled her fists tightly, trying so hard to calm herself down as she listened to Cindy's hurtful words. She kept telling herself that she wasn't worth it and to just let her be. "Oh, and for the horrible coffee, have this." She threw out a bunch of dollar bills. "Catch you later," she muttered with a smirk and turned on her heels. She was about to leave when Lily suddenly pulled herself from Alyssa's hold, picked up the remaining coffee, and poured it on her back. "Arg!" Cindy screamed out in pure agony as the hot coffee burnt her flesh. "You fucking bitch!" She cussed out as she danced on her spot. Her pale skin had turned bright red. She had no blister, as her wolf healing the burn, but it was obvious that it still hurt her. "Now you know how it feels," Lily said with a wicked smile. You'll pay for this. I'll make sure Ezekiel punish you for this," she said to Alyssa, her face red with pain and anger. She knew she couldn't fight back as she was in great pain and Lily would easily overpower her, so that made her angrier. "Take your money because you obviously need it more than us now," Lily said as she picked up the dollar bills and threw it at her. Cindy couldn't bear the pain anymore, so she ran out of the cafe with tears in her eyes. After she had left, Alyssa finally got out of her shocked state. "Why did you do that?" she asked in sign language. "Someone needed to teach that bitch a lesson. I couldn't stand the way she was talking to you," Lily answered. "But, hush now, let's forget about her. She deserved it, and that's all that matters," Lily said, cutting her off. Alyssa stared at her in worry, wondering what Ezekiel was going to do to her. She knew he wasn't going to let her go scot-free if Cindy goes crying to him. She needed to make sure Lily is safe, because she took that action for her. She was still thinking about the next step to take when she received a text message from the hospital she was admitted in yesterday. They texted to inform her that her medical report had been sent to her emergency contact address. The moment she read that, she was filled with panic. If Ezekiel sees the report, he would find out about her pregnancy and her baby's life would be at stake. She rushed back home immediately to intercept the document. Thankfully, she managed to retrieve it on time before anyone else could. She took the document with her and locked it in a drawer in her closet. She sighed deeply, rest assured that she wasn't caught by anyone. That night, she was about to head to bed when she received a call from Lily. She stared at her phone, surprised as to why Lily would call her at such a time. She placed the phone on her ear after picking the call. "Alyssa?" Lily's voice sounded, but it sounded so distant and pained, unlike the way it was earlier that day. At some point, Alyssa could hear her sobbing. Alyssa sat up on her bed immediately, realizing that Ezekiel had hurt Lily, all because of Cindy. Alyssa's hurt deeply as she heard the deep pain engraved in her voice. It was more painful that she couldn't even utter any word to ask where she was. She knew this was going to happen, but why did she have to leave her on her own? It should be me instead. Ezekiel should have inflicted the pains on me. Lily only did what she did to defend me. Alyssa thought to herself in pain. It was really frustrating that she could only listen to her, so she ended the call without warning. She sent her a text asking her where she was, and she replied immediately, sending Alyssa the address to the hospital she was admitted in. Alyssa stood up from her bed and put on better clothes before rushing out of the house. Alyssa took in deep breaths, trying to catch her breath as she stood in front of the huge hospital building. She had practically ran down here because she forgot to take her phone and some cash with her. She heaved one last time before entering the building. She didn't bother to ask the nurse in the waiting room for Lily's room number since she had already texted it to her earlier. She got to her ward and pushed her way in. Her heart dropped when she saw Lily laying unconscious on the hospital bed. She had a huge bandage tied around her head with thick layers of blood staining it. Even though she had her own wolf and would probably heal quickly than Alyssa would, it still didn't hide the fact that this was the most heartless thing to do to someone. Alyssa swallowed down a sob that was threatening to burst out of her mouth as she took slow steps towards her. She knelt down beside her bed and shakily touched her unconscious face. "What did they do to you?" she asked herself as tears poured out of her eyes like a huge waterfall. "You got here fast." Alyssa heard his familiar voice, interrupting her cries, and turned to face him immediately. Her sadness immediately turned to pure rage when she saw Ezekiel enter the ward with Cindy, latched to his side like a magnet. He hurt Lily, all because of her, and still had the guts to bring her here again. What does he want now? What more damage can he possibly do now? She asked herself bitterly. Seeing them here together, Alyssa was once again reminded of her position in his heart, which was nowhere. She took in a deep breath to steady her emotions. He could hurt Lily this way without thinking twice, so she don't know what he would do to her if she annoyed him more. She couldn't put her baby's life at stake. "Why did you hurt her?" she asked calmly, using sign language. He stared at her silently, his eyes remaining unfazed, even though she was at the brink of an emotional outburst. He wanted to do something that would both hurt Alyssa and put her in her place. Lily had her wolf, so the injury was nothing serious, but seeing Alyssa in such a state made him feel conflicted. He started to wonder if he did the right thing. Poor Lily, she should have known her place. How dare a mere wolf like her attack me, the former Beta's daughter? Cindy's high-pitched voice resounded, pulling him out of his reverie. Alyssa turned to stare at her, and she didn't bother to hide how happy she was about the situation. She derives great pleasure in seeing Alyssa or the people she loved in pain. Lily only did that because Cindy attacked me first. If Cindy hadn't poured hot coffee on my face and openly mocked me, Lily wouldn't have done what she did. Alyssa explained to Ezekiel with sign language. Alyssa noticed how Ezekiel's dark and emotionless eyes changed for a split second when she mentioned how Cindy assaulted Nur on purpose, but it quickly changed back to the way it was, making her doubt what she saw. And why would Cindy attack you? If she had truly attacked you, shouldn't there be evidence? He asked as he gave her a look filled with disbelief. Alyssa sighed deeply, wondering what she was thinking when she decided to tell him the truth about what had really happened. To him, Cindy was like a harmless puppy, an angel that could do no wrong to others. That was the way she painted herself to him, so whatever Alyssa told him would be deemed a lie. Even the devil was once an angel. Everything that happened today was my fault. Lily only attacked Cindy because of me, so take out all of your anger on me and leave Lily alone. Alyssa pleaded, but he didn't reply. Seeing that she was going nowhere with her sincere and desperate pleas, she did the one thing she had never thought she would ever do. She turned to Cindy, swallowing her pride. She rubbed her palm together and apologized with sign language. It was really insulting, but she didn't care. All that mattered to her at that moment was Lily's safety. An evil glint appeared in Cindy's eyes as she saw Alyssa in her most vulnerable moment. It was the most perfect time to strike and humiliate her. More so, she scoffed and turned to Ezekiel. She knows I don't understand sign language and still keeps trying to converse with me. She might be insulting me now and I don't even know," she complained. It was so obvious what Alyssa was trying to tell her, but knowing her, she wouldn't ever let Alyssa go without mocking her disability. So Alyssa turned towards Ezekiel, hoping he would support her by translating what she had just done. Instead, he calmly stated with a firm tone, "Even though her intentions were to protect and defend you, she shouldn't have gone that far." Alyssa stared at him with quivering eyes. She went far? After I had just told him what Cindy did to me first. She thought sadly. Besides, Lily has to take responsibility for her actions instead of relying on you to defend and apologize for her. "You and your friend are nothing but trouble," he added as he rubbed his head tiredly. Alyssa lowered her gaze as his words resounded in her head. "He's right. I was nothing but trouble to him. Why do I still bother with him? Why does he still try to keep me around then?" she thought. "If I'm nothing but trouble to you, why don't you sign the divorce papers?" She asked him in sign language and he went still immediately. What is he waiting for? This is something he has always wanted, so she doesn't expect him to think twice about it. His eyes' color suddenly turned red. This only happens when they are about to have sex or when he's extremely angry, and Alyssa's never had any good memory of every time it happened. Seeing the color of his eyes, it sent Alyssa down memory lane about all of the nights he had spent with her, violently ravishing her body, and that made her scared. Out of reflex, she moved away from him with her eyes quivering in fear. Ezekiel's eyes turned back to normal when he noticed how her once beautiful eyes quivered and how she moved away in fear. She was scared of him? Why would she be scared of him? He was her fated mate. He was about to say something when Cindy suddenly groaned in pain. His attention turned to her immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked in worry, but she couldn't utter a word. His anxiety increased when she closed her eyes and was about to fall down, but he was quick enough to catch her. He carried her in his arms and dashed out of the ward, leaving behind a heartbroken Alyssa. "You and your friend are nothing but trouble," Ezekiel added as he rubbed his head tiredly. His next few words got stuck on his throat the moment he saw the look in her eyes. It seemed like she was about to cry. He had always enjoyed making her cry, so what was wrong now? Why is he suddenly feeling regrets? She deserved every hate that was coming from him, so he shouldn't feel any hint of compassion for her. "If I'm nothing but trouble to you, why don't you sign the divorce papers?" Alyssa asked him in sign language, and he went still immediately. She still hadn't let go of the thought of leaving him. What else did he have to do to show her that there wasn't any escaping from him ever? He will only let go of her when he's done. He could also feel the anger from his wolf as they were one. He was about to say something when his wolf suddenly took over. His eyes turned glowing red, but the reaction from Alyssa wasn't something he had expected. She moved back a little and batted her eyelashes in fear. His wolf immediately went still when he noticed that. She was scared of him. Why? At that moment, he was filled with mixed emotions. Cindy, whom had been happily watching the fear on Alyssa's face, immediately panicked when she noticed the change in Ezekiel's emotions. To divert his attention, she let out a fake groan. Her voice was enough to help Ezekiel regain back himself. Before she could land on the ground, he caught her and carried her out of the ward, deliberately ignoring the heartbroken look on Alyssa's face. In another ward, a wolf doctor took series of tests on Cindy as per Ezekiel's command. He feared that she hadn't fully healed from Lily's earlier attack. As the doctor did his job, Cindy made sure to put on a pain-stricken act even though there was nothing wrong anymore. She knew how vulnerable Ezekiel was towards a hurt person, so she intended to use his vulnerability to her gain. Despite her acts, the doctor still couldn't find anything physically wrong with her. When Ezekiel realized that she faked being in pain, he was really furious. "Why did you do that?" he asked angrily after the doctor had left. Cindy remained silent in fear as she had already been caught. "Why would you go to the extent of faking your health just to get my attention?" he asked again, but she still remained mute. He sighed and rubbed his face tiredly. Today had been really stressful to him. From one issue to another, he didn't have the strength to deal with another drama. I made promises to both you and my father, and I won't go back on the one I made to you, so don't push your luck." He warned while she nodded, realizing the seriousness of his words. "I won't blink twice in sending you abroad to find your mate if you continue with such antics." A flicker of fear appeared on Cindy's eyes when he made such a threat. "I'm sorry," she wasn't able to culminate her words when he stormed of the ward. A deep frown appeared on Cindy's face after he had left. All through their relationship, Ezekiel hardly got mad with her. They've only had little fights, most of which was when he was about to get married to Alyssa. He had always been really gentle and careful with her, so this is the first time he was talking to her in such a manner. Worst of all, he was threatening to send her away, all because of Alyssa. If not for her, she would have been Ezekiel's Luna, but she just had to come into the picture and ruin it all. She needed to do something fast before Alyssa fully claims her rightful position. After leaving Cindy's ward, Ezekiel hurried towards the doctor's office. He took long strides as he couldn't waste any more time. He knew that for Alyssa, time was of essence. He knocked on the door softly and entered without waiting for the doctor to usher him in. He could already sense the doctor's presence, so he only knocked to alert his intrusion. The doctor, who had been arranging some files on his desk, immediately stood up and paid respect to his alpha before offering him a seat. Ezekiel sat down comfortably and went straight to the point. "How's the preparation for the surgery coming up?" he asked. "The surgery is ready. We only need the patient now," the doctor answered. Ezekiel nodded in understanding and asked again, "What's the possibility of fully restoring her voice?" "It will be 100% successful because, like you said, her condition isn't hereditary, and with the current medical technologies, I can assure you that nothing would go wrong," the doctor answered. A small sense of relief washed over Ezekiel. Finally, the day had come. He knew what this would mean to Alyssa. He could already picture her happy face in his head when she finds out about this. If she finally regained her voice, he would feel no shame in presenting her to the whole pack as his Luna. As he thought about that idea, a small smile appeared on his lips unknowingly. When he realized what he was doing, the smile immediately disappeared the same way it came. He scolded himself mentally. "What the hell is wrong with me?" he asked himself. "Don't get any ideas, Ezekiel. You're only doing this to fulfill your father's wishes. Even though she regains her voice, it doesn't change the fact that she's a weak Omega with no background," he thought, trying to convince himself. This is his last responsibility towards her and his father. After that, he'll use her the way he wants. As Ezekiel was lost in his thoughts, he didn't realize that Cindy had been eavesdropping on his conversation with the doctor. When she heard about the surgery to help Alyssa regain her voice, her blood boiled hotter than before. Why? Why does he want to help her? Why can't he leave her the way she is now? She asked herself angrily. She had the urge to burst into the room and question his decisions, but she held herself back. She didn't want him to chase her away like he had earlier threatened, but she also couldn't sit back and watch him slip away from her hands. She needed to secure her post, and the only way to do that was make Alyssa disappear. She was going to do whatever it takes for that to happen. As Alyssa watched Ezekiel leave with his lover in his arms, she felt deep pain that she had never felt before. Watching him act like she didn't exist made deep cuts in her heart, damaging her the more. How could he be so cruel to her? Even though he hated her, couldn't he feel the mate bond drawing them together? Did he hate her that much that it was able to triumph over their unbreakable mate bond? Alyssa sighed and blinked away tears from her eyes. She needed to pull herself back to reality. Their mate bond is nothing compared to what he felt for Cindy. She needed to realize and accept that she was nothing to him. That way, it wouldn't hurt this much. She wiped her tears and turned towards Lily. All that matters is how to get her out of this mess she put her in. She pulled a stool and positioned it close to Lily's bed before she sat on it. "I'm so sorry, Lily. It's all my fault." She silently signed with her hands, filled with guilt in her heart. She stayed that way, watching Lily sleep peacefully, her mind still on the event that had happened between her, Cindy, and Ezekiel earlier. She tried so hard to distract herself, but it wasn't working. That night, Ezekiel didn't come to see her once. She thought she would be fine, and even get used to the fact that he preferred Cindy's company to hers, but it still hurt her deeply. She gently caressed her stomach, reaffirming her decision to divorce him. No matter how angry and stubborn he gets, she was going to leave this loveless marriage and raise their child on her own. It didn't take long for her to fall asleep with her hands still wrapped tightly around Lily's. The next day, Alyssa woke up immediately. She heard the door to the ward creak open. She stared around tiredly and noticed that she was still in the hospital. "You're awake." A voice startled her, and she turned only to see Ezekiel staring at her with his usual emotionless gaze. She stared at him in both surprise and joy. He finally came to see her. Even though the events of last night still hurt her deeply, she was really glad to see his face. "Come on. There's something you need to do," he said to her before leaving, not bothering to ask about her night. Alyssa didn't care about his approach but was confused as to what he needed her to do. She decided to follow him to see for herself before his mood changes. He took fast strides while Alyssa tried to catch up with him. Alyssa's face suddenly went pale when she realized that he was heading to an operating room. She stood frozen in place, staring in terror at his retreating figure. The memories of the last miscarriage in the operating room instantly engulfed her. Blinding surgical lights, the cold operating table, the heart-wrenching pain, and the hopelessness of waking up from anesthesia only to find she had lost the baby. These memories almost suffocated her. Why is he going to the operating room? Does he know I'm pregnant? Is he going to? Fear spread wildly in her heart. She couldn't bear the pain of losing another child in the operating room. The last accident had already tortured her, and this time she vowed to protect this new baby at all costs. When Ezekiel realized that she wasn't following him, he stopped and turned to face her. "What are you doing?" he asked, making her jump in fear. Huh?" She blinked, trying to control her rising panic. "Aren't you coming?" he asked again, impatience creeping into his voice. "What are we doing here?" she asked as she pinched her fingernails nervously, her hands shaking as she signed. "You'll see," Ezekiel answered with a small smile, irking her the more. "Is he so glad to murder our second child?" she asked herself, tears brimming at the corner of her eyes. "Come on, you're wasting time," Ezekiel urged, but she didn't budge. "I don't want to do it," she told him in sign language. "What?" "I don't want to have the surgery," she added. "Why not? This is the best decision for you," he said as he walked towards her and attempted to touch her, but she moved away, her body tensing like a frightened animal. "I know what's best for me, and I'm telling you, I don't want to have the surgery," she told him, standing her ground despite her trembling hands. Ezekiel sighed as he rubbed his head in frustration. "Don't make this harder than it already is, Alyssa. Do as I say, or I'll have to use force," he warned. "No, nothing will make me have this surgery," she said in sign language as she wrapped her hands protectively around her belly, memories of her previous loss making her desperate to protect this child. Ezekiel stared at her in surprise, wondering why she was so hell-bent on not having the surgery when that was all she had ever dreamt of, to be able to finally talk. He was tired of her being a nuisance, so he quickly grabbed her before she could run and pulled her with him, despite her cries and pleas of not wanting the surgery. "In a few hours' time, you'll realize that it was all for your own good," he muttered as he pulled her with him towards the room, but that didn't stop her from resisting. When it was too much, he stopped and held her in place. His eyes were cold as ice as he glared angrily at her. Seeing that he was getting angry, she stopped thrashing around immediately for fear of what he was going to do to her. "You had better behave yourself and not disappoint me, because this surgery is going to take place whether you like it or not," he warned coldly. Alyssa's heart sank to her stomach, the fight draining from her body. She knew his resolve was unshakable no matter how hard she tried. She nodded slowly, bitter tears stinging her eyes as she blamed herself for not being able to protect this baby too. Just when despair threatened to overwhelm her, Simon appeared. He was Ezekiel's beta, and he claimed he needed Alyssa's help in signing Lily's medical documents as she was Lily's guardian at the moment. Alyssa quickly followed him without asking any questions, as it helped her to escape Ezekiel's heartless sight. As she followed him, she realized they were going the wrong path. She was about to ask where he was going when he finally stopped walking. He gave a small bow to someone before leaving. After he left, Alyssa could finally see who it was. She was shocked to find Cindy waiting for her. Her legs were crossed as she stared at Alyssa with pure disgust and hatred. Knowing this wouldn't end well, Alyssa was about to take her leave when Cindy uttered something that made her stop on her spot. "After your surgery, Ezekiel and I are planning to finally get married," she announced with a smug smile dancing on her lips. The words hit her like a physical blow, each syllable driving daggers into her already bleeding heart. So this was why Ezekiel insisted on the surgery. He was finally choosing his lover officially. That moment shattered any remaining illusions she had about their relationship. Reality crashed down on her with crushing force. It was truly over between them. Ezekiel had never harbored any feelings for her, despite all her desperate hoping. The realization left her feeling hollow inside, too numb even for tears. She made her way back to the operating room in a daze. Ezekiel noticed her changed demeanor and seemed about to ask what had happened, but held himself back, his momentary concern masked quickly by indifference. Only when inside the operating room Alyssa realized that it wasn't an abortion, but to restore her voice. On a normal day, she would have been very happy, with the thought that Ezekiel did it to help her. Today was different, as the news Cindy broke to her made her realize that Ezekiel was only doing it because of his father's wishes, so it didn't matter to her anymore. Her heart had already been broken beyond repair by the man she loved the most. After the surgery, her voice was restored, but she felt no joy. Ezekiel was brimming with smiles. He entered the ward they had transferred her into. This was a rare sight, and that made Alyssa wonder if he was that happy to finally send her off. "You just had surgery, so you have to rest and avoid speaking too much," he said in a soft voice which was unlike him, but Alyssa was too heartbroken to notice. "Also, the cafe you're working at has been closed, so you don't have to leave the house anymore," he instructed her, but Alyssa didn't reply him. After being in a comfortable silence for a while, she decided to make her decision known even though it would hurt her forever. Her voice was hoarse and deep, but her words were firm and clear. "I, Alyssa Gray, reject you, Ezekiel Crawford." She spoke her first sentence ever. Ezekiel felt a sharp pain in his heart the moment he heard that. His wolf wasn't left out either. He could hear him howling in pain from within. Why?" His voice broke as he asked. "I don't want to be trapped in this loveless marriage anymore. Please let me go." "I, Alyssa Gray, reject you, Ezekiel Crawford." She spoke her first sentence ever. Ezekiel felt a sharp pain in his heart the moment he heard that. His wolf wasn't left out either. He could hear him howling in pain from within. It felt like his heart was being pierced by a sharp knife. Why? He stuttered out painfully, his usual composure completely shattered. Never in his wildest nightmares had he imagined hearing those words from her. "I don't want to be trapped in this loveless marriage anymore. Please let me go," she muttered, not caring how pained he looked. From the first day they met, he had always noticed the look she gave him. She never bothered to hide how deeply she was in love with, but now, staring at her, he barely recognized the woman before him. Her eyes that once held such warmth and deep affection for him had transformed into cold pools filled with pain, anger, resentment, and deep regret. The change shook him to his core. "But you love me," he muttered. "I did, but not anymore. All that I feel for you at the moment is sheer disappointment. I can't even bear to keep staring at you. I really hope you just disappear out of my life from now on." She spat out venomously. Ezekiel stood at his spot. His heart felt like it had been hit with a dull, heavy blow. Staring at her, he knew she meant every word she said, but he just didn't want to believe it. The Alyssa he knew loved him to the bone. What's up with her now? No, he can't have it. He won't let her reject him nor divorce him. "Don't make any decision you would end up regretting later," he warned her, hoping she would withdraw her statement. "This is the best decision I've ever managed to make since the day I found out you're my fated mate, so there's no way I would ever regret it. I just hope you would respect my choice," she muttered, maintaining her stance. Seeing her absolute determination to leave him, Ezekiel's pain transformed into burning fury. Unable to find words to make her take back her rejection, he stormed out of the ward, the door slamming behind him. Cindy watched as Ezekiel left the hospital angrily and couldn't help but smile evilly. Her plan had worked. The bitch believed her and decided to leave Ezekiel without having to force her. It's a good thing that she finally knows her place. Now that Alyssa's out of the way, Ezekiel wouldn't be distracted anymore, and she would finally take her rightful position as his Luna. Alyssa remained at the hospital for a few more hours before she left. She didn't want Ezekiel to come back and still find her there, as he might stop her from leaving. When she got to the mansion that she shared with Ezekiel, she walked straight to her room, ignoring the servants that were trying so hard to irritate her. She was leaving, so she didn't want to have anything to do with them anymore. She got to her room and started packing immediately. She never for once thought there would be a day like this. This place once harbored hope for her. After losing her family and packed to rogues, this place became a safe haven for her, even though she was constantly bullied. She recalled a time, years ago, when Emma and her friends mocked her during a shopping trip because she couldn't afford the luxury Emma could, and Ezekiel immediately came to her defense. He then gave her his credit card so she could buy anything of her choice. Those were the good days. Back then, she was confident that through her efforts she could change their relationship and how he felt towards her. But reality had given her a harsh lesson. If only she knew it would end like this, she wouldn't have put up with the pains and constant bullying. She would have fought back and made sure they never walk over her again. After she finished packing, she realized that she had no friends who would take her in. A bitter laugh escaped her throat as she realized she had nowhere to go, not a single friend she could turn to for shelter. The irony of it all made her heart ache. For Ezekiel, she had gradually given up everything that made her who she was. Her social connections had withered away one by one under his constant criticism. "They're not good enough for you," he would say, or "they're just using you." She had believed him then, foolishly thinking his possessiveness meant he cared. Her eyes drifted to the kitchen visible through her open door, and a particular memory surfaced, one that still had the power to make her heart ache. She remembered spending hours in that kitchen on Ezekiel's birthday last year, determined to make him the perfect cake. She had practiced for weeks in secret, wanting to surprise him with something special made by her own hands. Instead, his face had twisted in disgust after one bite. "What the hell is this? How can someone make such an awful cake? Someone like you should never be allowed in the kitchen," he added before throwing the rest of the cake on the floor. Alyssa held back her tears as she cleaned up the splattered cake she had poured all of her heart and effort into. Since that day, she never baked him any cakes or snacks again. She realized how much she had sacrificed for him, only to be treated like trash. If only. She took one last glance at the mansion that she once termed her home. She took in a deep breath before turning on her heels and she walked away. She walked down the cold streets, pulling her luggage with her, unsure of where to go when a motorcycle screeched to a stop in front of her. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw Lily. She was still unconscious at the hospital when she left. How come she's here now? The moment Lily regained consciousness, she searched for Alyssa because she knew there was no way Alyssa would leave her alone in the hospital without an explanation. She tried calling, but she wasn't picking up. Neither was she answering her texts, and that only made her anxious. She decided to go search for her at her home for fear that Ezekiel might have done something to her. What she didn't expect was to see her on the road with her luggage, looking like the world had ended. She immediately realized what had happened, so she got down from her bike and gave Alyssa a warm hug. Being in her arms, Alyssa couldn't hold back herself, so she bursted into tears, while Lily patted her softly on her back to comfort her. After Alyssa had calmed down, she explained everything that had happened with her hoarse voice. Lily's mouth opened agape as she listened to Alyssa talk. "You can speak?" she asked in shock, while Alyssa nodded with a small smile. She screamed happily and pulled Alyssa into another hug. This is really great. You've regained your voice and finally left that scumbag of a husband. I'm so happy for you, she muttered happily. So what do you plan to do now? She asked as she pulled away from the hug. Leave this place and start over somewhere far away, Alyssa muttered. You're right, we can do it together, Lily said. Really? Yes. The cafe has been closed down, so you don't expect me to still stay here when there's nothing left for me anymore. We can leave the city together and start a new life somewhere else where no one would be there to constantly disturb us. Lily invited. Alyssa thought for a while before she agreed. She needed to let go of the past to move on, and to do that, she needed to leave the place that had scarred her. Hop on then, Lily ushered, and Alyssa got on the back of Lily's motorcycle before she zoomed off, the cold wind of the chilly night blowing, giving her a sense of hope for the new life ahead. Earlier that day, Ezekiel paced outside the operating room, his calm exterior masking the turmoil within. After Alyssa's desperate resistance to the surgery, he hadn't expected her to return willingly. Her sudden change in demeanor troubled him. Something was wrong. Her eyes had been disturbingly empty when she walked back, making him wonder if something had happened with Lily. He wanted to ask what had changed, but pride held him back. He couldn't show any sign of caring, not when he had spent so long maintaining his distance. The surgery seemed to stretch endlessly. Though the doctors had assured him of success, anxiety gnawed at his insides. Every minute felt like an hour as he stood there, his thoughts fixed on Alyssa lying unconscious in that room. All of a sudden, he felt someone standing beside him. It was Cindy. Since she already had her plan in motion, she figured her and Ezekiel would finally be together after Alyssa's surgery, but what she didn't expect was his reaction. "What are you doing here?" he suddenly asked coldly. "I figured I should also be here, to give my support," she answered innocently. "Who asked you to do that?" he sneered. She opened her mouth but closed it immediately when she couldn't find any suitable answer. She couldn't understand the reason he was suddenly acting like that towards her. "Alyssa would be very upset to find you here, so you need to leave," he ordered. Cindy stared at him in surprise, not expecting him to utter those words. What did he mean by that? Has he suddenly forgotten who she was to him? When Ezekiel noticed was still there, he got angry. "Do I have to repeat myself?" he growled. Cindy was taken aback by the way he was acting towards her. She was his lover, but he keeps putting that wench above her. It hurt so much, but she couldn't disobey him for fear of what he might do to her. Seeing she was at the losing end, she balled her fists angrily and stormed off with tears in her eyes. Ezekiel dismissed her reaction, his attention returning to the operating room doors. He couldn't explain why her presence had bothered him so much today, why the thought of her being here during Alyssa's surgery felt so wrong. It took a few hours before the doors to the operating room was finally opened, and the doctor walked out. Ezekiel rushed towards him immediately. He had no time to waste, as he had been growing impatient for the past hours. He stood waiting in front of the operating room. "How's she, doctor?" he asked. The doctor smiled at him, and "The surgery was a success," he announced. Ezekiel had a blank look on, but internally he felt a wave of relief and happiness wash over him. "So can I see her now?" he asked. "Of course you can, but you shouldn't stress her. She just got out of surgery, so she's weak, and her voice isn't that clear yet," the doctor informed. Ezekiel nodded his head in understanding at the doctor's words. Just then, the operating room was opened again, and Alyssa was pushed out in a stretcher. He followed the nurses as they took her to a private ward. After they fixed a drip on her, they left. Since it was just the both of them left in the ward, Ezekiel could no longer contain his happiness as he stared at Alyssa. Finally, he would be able to hear her talk. He noticed how down she looked, even though she had just received the best gift ever. The sight puzzled him. This was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life, yet she looked almost broken. For the first time in a long while, he actually felt the urge to ask what was troubling her. But before he could get the words out, she opened her mouth and uttered her first words ever. "I, Alyssa Gray, reject you, Ezekiel Crawford." Ezekiel's countenance changed immediately when she said those words. It was like being doused in ice water. Shock, Pain and fury crashed through him in rapid succession. She should be jubilating now, grateful for the gift he had given her. Instead, she was rejecting him. He couldn't understand why she would react this way after everything he had done for her. His mind refused to process her words about not loving him anymore. The Alyssa he knew worshipped the ground he walked on. This had to be some sort of confusion or temporary madness. When she mentioned divorce, his reaction was pure instinct. Absolutely not. There was no way he would ever sign those papers. She belonged with him. End of discussion. So he didn't accept her rejection and stormed out of the ward angrily. He got into his car and drove off without any destination in mind. The only thoughts that filled his head were Alyssa's cruel words and her cold eyes as she stared at him. When it got too hard to drive and think at the same time, he stopped at the side of the road and got out of his car. His mind wandered to what might have caused her outburst. Do you really still have to think about it when you know you are the cause of it? His wolf suddenly said, breaking into his chain of thoughts. What do you mean? He asked back. You caused this. Your coldness and betrayal drove our mate away. His wolf uttered angrily. But she loves me, and not just because of our mate bond, Ezekiel argued. You think any sane person would like to pass through all that she did in your hands, all in the name of love? His wolf sneered at him. The question hit Ezekiel hard, but he just couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe he had hurt her to the extent of her deciding to reject and leave him. She loved him so much, and nothing could ever break the feeling she had for him. I did love you, but not anymore. All that I feel for you at the moment is sheer disappointment. I can't even bear to keep staring at you. I really hope you just disappear out of my life from now on. Her words echoed in his head, making his heart feel like it had been stabbed repeatedly. She felt just disgust and disappointment for him now? Why? Has she given her heart to someone else? Different questions crossed his mind. His wolf scoffed at that thought. He was angry that Ezekiel still didn't want to see things the way they are, but just the way the perceives them to be. He knew there was nothing he could do to make him see reality, so he shut himself in. At the office, it was already dark, but Ezekiel didn't bother to go home as always. He knew Alyssa had gone back, and he didn't want to hear any topic related to their divorce. He buried himself in numerous work at the office so as to clear out Alyssa's hurtful words from his head. As he was sorting out some files that needed his attention, Simon, his beta, walked in. I received this from Mrs. Alyssa, he announced as he placed a file on Ezekiel's desk. Ezekiel reluctantly opened it only to find the divorce papers and the credit card he had once given to her. Filled with rage, he snapped the card in half. He had convinced himself that giving her space would bring her to her senses, that she would eventually realize how ridiculous this whole divorce notion was. Yet, here was proof that she remained determined to leave him. A cold calculation formed in his mind. He could still control this situation. Cut off all her financial resources, he ordered Simon. If she has nothing at all, she wouldn't try to leave him. She has already left the city, Simon announced, startling Ezekiel. What? She left a while ago with her friend Lily, Simon added. Ezekiel could feel his insides boiling when he heard that. It seems like what I did to that bitch isn't enough for her. I can see she wants more, he snarled, rage darkening his features as murderous thoughts about Lily filled his mind. His hand was already rising to order Simon to bring them back when something inside him seized control. His wolf, silent until now, suddenly surged forward with overwhelming force. Ezekiel felt his control slip away like water through his fingers. To his horror, he watched helplessly as his own hand moved across the paper, signing away his marriage. This is punishment for how you've treated our mate. You also need to suffer the same way she did, all through our marriage. He wolf warned. Ezekiel stared at his signature on the papers, feeling a wave of disbelief. He was forced to accept that the divorce had happened, but was this really what he wanted? 5 years later, Grim Hunter's pack. Alyssa was dressed in a white chef's coat, with a net cap covering her hair as she busily worked in the kitchen, crafting new pastries. The restaurant, Sweet Moments, was filled to the brim by customers that wanted to have a taste of the Alyssa's famous desserts. It's been 5 whole years since Alyssa decided to leave Moonstone Keeper's Pack, a place that was supposed to serve as solace for her but ended up scarring her deeply. 5 years since she decided to leave her past behind and start a new life with Lily and her unborn child, and 5 years of not regretting her decision once. Since leaving Moonstone Keeper's Pack, she and Lily used the money they managed to gather in their once-opened cafe, and they rented a small storefront. It wasn't really easy as she was pregnant at that time, but thanks to her exquisite baking skills and unique creativity, accompanied by Lily's constant support, they were able to make the business flourish. Little by little, Sweet Moments grew and became a popular dessert destination. As time passed, the shop's reputation soared, drawing dessert lovers from all over the pack. Customers came in from far and near to have a taste of what she had to offer, and they weren't disappointed. Lily helped in the daily affairs of the shop, having resolutely cut ties with her wolf pack to support Alyssa. She never really cared about them, as they never supported her either. After receiving the divorce papers from Ezekiel 5 years ago, Alyssa felt a deep sense of freedom from the first time in her life. Life had never been good and peaceful to her. She was finally free from the shadows of her painful past. The only regret she had was that even though she had initially rejected him, their mate bond hadn't been severed as he didn't accept her rejection due to reasons best known to him. When she initially left, she could feel intense longing for him, and it got worse since she regained back her wolf. A few weeks after her voice had fully healed, she started to feel different. She noticed she started to have increased vision, strength, and sense of hearing. All of her senses were heightened. It didn't take long for her to start hearing things, even though no one was around her. She turned to Lily for help, fearing that she was slowly going crazy. After Lily listened to her complaints, she understood what was going on, as she had passed through it before. Alyssa was shocked and also happy to find out it was her wolf trying to communicate with her. She had thought she would never get her wolf, as she had already passed the age limit. Now that her wolf was back, it made her yearning for Ezekiel and pain from his betrayal increase, but due to the fact that they were far apart, she was able to keep her emotions and her wolf at bay. Little by little, the feeling and sense of longing decreased. She had a lot of things to keep her busy and get her mind off Ezekiel, like the business she shared with Lily and her little bundle of joy, Aiden. Over the years, the son she had given birth to had grown. Now, the striking resemblance he had with his father was so obvious that merely staring at him reminded her of Ezekiel. He was the only good thing she had from her marriage with Ezekiel, and he was her most precious gift from the moon goddess. She was so thankful to have him in her life. Alyssa felt small hands wrapped around her back, interrupting what she was doing. She turned around and picked him up. "My baby, I missed you so much," she muttered as she placed a small kiss on his cheek, making him chuckle softly. "I miss you more, Mommy," Aiden muttered as he wrapped his small hands around her neck. "How was school today?" she asked again. Aiden smiled from ear to ear and proceeded to gist her about all of the events that happened at his school that day, while Alyssa listened attentively. Even though she couldn't completely give him everything a child his age could ever want, which was having both parents, she still tried to be involved in everything that concerns him, no matter how little it was. She never lets her work interfere with her relationship with him. She made sure to listen to every minute detail of his life and tries to fill up the hole of not having a father, but Aiden, being the good boy that he was, never for once complained. His mother was everything to him, so he never really asked why he didn't have a father like his mates. He was more than contented with having Alyssa as his mother. "Also, I had a taste of the new dessert you added to my lunchbox, and I have to say, it's really delicious," he added in his tiny voice, making her chuckle. "You like it that much?" she asks him, and he nodded. "Really? What makes it so special?" Alyssa asked. "It was wonderfully sweet with an irresistible aroma, Mommy. Even my classmates couldn't help but ask for some," he explained. "It's a new recipe that I'm working on. I just hope it will be success." Aiden suddenly palmed Alyssa's face, interrupting her sentence. "Don't worry, it's going to be a big hit just like the rest." was he assured, making Alyssa chuckle softly at how matured he looked. Unlike most children his age, Aiden was a very fast learner, and he was really smart. If one listens to him talk, they wouldn't really tell that he's just a 5-year-old child. "Since you've already assured me, I guess it will actually be a hit," she said as she placed him down. "And for always supporting Mama, here's your reward," she muttered as she handed him a plate of the dessert that he was talking about. Aiden's eyes grew wide as he stared at it. He thanked her profusely before collecting the dessert. He went to sit on a chair and wasted no time in devouring it. Just then, Lily entered the kitchen. She seemed to be on a video call with someone. "Who's it?" Alyssa mouthed at her when he noticed the playful, angry look on Lily's face. With an eye roll, "It's Lewis," she muttered. Alyssa chucked softly, understanding why she was in such a mood. Lewis was Lily's elder brother, and like most siblings, most of their conversations were usually banter. Even after Loli left, Lewis still resides in Moonstone Keeper's pack, and as he is also a close friend to Ezekiel. Alyssa listened inattentively as they argued amongst themselves, but her ears perked up the moment she heard Lewis accidentally mention something about Ezekiel. It wasn't what she had expected to happen after their separation, and that only piqued her interest. Ezekiel, whom had been lost in his thoughts, was snapped back to the present when he heard his name being called repeatedly by Simon. Simon was briefing him on decisions that needed his attention, though Ezekiel thought that many of them could be handled by his beta. "We have an upcoming elite gathering this evening, and as Alpha, you're supposed to attend it," Simon reminded Ezekiel, and he nodded in understanding. He understood, but his pack had lacked a Luna since Alyssa's departure. How was he going to attend without his Luna? Hearing his words, his wolf couldn't help but scoff. "Like you have ever thought of taking her to any of the pack's gathering before. Even though she was still here, you would never have thought of bringing her to the event," he mocked. Ezekiel knew it was the truth, and that only made him angry. He couldn't stand his wolf constantly reminding him about how badly he had treated Alyssa, so he blocked off the connection with him. No matter how his wolf made it seem like he was at fault, he still couldn't forgive Alyssa for destroying his ideal of love. She caused how his life had turned out to be. If she weren't his mate, he would have cherished her as his beloved sister, just like he used to, and Cindy would have been the perfect choice as his Luna, given her prestigious background as the former beta's daughter and her striking beauty. If not for his father's orders, he would have refused the union with Alyssa. He knew that if he had introduced her to the pack, she would only be subject to ridicule as she wasn't fit to be a Luna. "Stop with the hypocrisy. You only hid her from others because you were ashamed of her, so stop trying to make it look like you were concerned for her," his wolf chided. "And you should stop acting like you know how I feel and think when you obviously don't," Nicholas thought angrily, making his wolf chuckle deeply. "Have you forgotten that we are one? We share the same body, and I am the only one that know best how you think," his wolf said, and it only infuriated Ezekiel because he knew it was the truth. "You claim that you would have married Cindy if not for your father's wishes. He's dead now, and Alyssa isn't even here, so why haven't you married her?" his wolf asked. Ezekiel went silent immediately, as he couldn't think of a suitable answer to give. "For the sake of your own desires, you keep hurting two women that loves you deeply, so you need to stop acting like a saint and deceiving yourself. It's your fault that Alyssa's gone. You signed the divorce papers," Ezekiel argued, making his wolf roll his eye in annoyance. "And now, your suffering is the punishment for your actions." His wolf sneered before blocking the connection. Ezekiel let out a frustrated sigh as he rested his back on the couch he was seated on. This had been what he had been passing through for the past 5 years. His wolf constantly blaming him for Alyssa's departure, and he still couldn't think of what he did wrong. He made a promise to both his father and Cindy, and he had to honor both. Later that evening, Ezekiel attended the elite gathering alone. He sat on the seat designed for him as the alpha and watched silently as the party went on. He felt a deep sense of loneliness as he thought about her. Even though his wolf had earlier mocked him, he still had the thought that if Alyssa hadn't left, he would have brought her in as his date. The party was filled to the brim with loud chattering and happy laughter, but he felt uneasy. He was about to head outside to take a breath when he felt someone wrap hands in his. He turned to see who would dare to do that, and was annoyed to find out it was Cindy. He was about to lash out at her when some of his most esteemed pack members walked towards him. They greeted him respectfully, even though they was much older than him, as he is their alpha. When they noticed how close he was to Cindy, they couldn't help but suspect something going on between them. Since he became the alpha, everyone wanted him to find his mate and produce heirs. They've only seen him with Cindy on several occasions, but till now, he hasn't decided to marry her, and that made them impatient. The pack needed an heir. Ezekiel was annoyed when he noticed the look on their faces, as Cindy's presence and flirtatious behavior only attracted the assumption that she was his date. One of them finally took the courage to ask, "I see you brought in a date. Is she your mate?" The man asked, while rest of them waited anxiously for his answer. Ezekiel turned to stare, and Cindy, who was smiling from ear to ear. He pulled away her hand from his and answered, "No," instantly wiping off the wide smile away from her face. "I already have a wife," he added before walking off. The rest men were surprised at what they had just heard. Their alpha finally had a bride, but who was she? It clearly isn't the lady that's forcing herself on him. Cindy was so embarrassed at the event that had just happened. Ezekiel had just announced that he was married and didn't acknowledge her as the bride. She thought that now was the time he would finally get married to her. Alyssa was gone, but he still didn't acknowledge her as his wife. Cindy felt tears pooling at the corner of her eyes, but she held her emotions in check. She couldn't make a scene right now in front of everyone. After the party had ended, Cindy confronted Ezekiel. "What was the meaning of the stunt you pulled off earlier?" she asked angrily. "I should be asking you that question. Why were you at the gathering today?" he asked back coldly. "Why did you tell them that you're married?" she asked again, ignoring his question. "That's because I'm married," he answered. "What about me?" He turned towards her with his brows raised. "What's with that question? It's been 5 years. 5 years since Alyssa divorced you. Don't you think it's high time we get married?" she asked at the top of her lungs. "I thought I've made it clear to you already. My Luna can only be my mate, and that's Alyssa. This is a vow I made to my father, and one I intend to honor. Same with the one I made to you, which is to indulge your every wish except the Luna title," Ezekiel answered. "So you were never planning on getting married to me?" Cindy asked, her voice breaking in sadness. "Don't try to make it harder than it already is. You've always known my stance from the beginning," Ezekiel answered tiredly. He was tired of constantly explaining himself and listening to her complain. "Why? Why do I always have to come second to Alyssa? She left you, remember? She left, but you still can't get over her," she screamed at him. "Cindy, I'm the only one that truly loved you. Not Alyssa, because if she did, she wouldn't have left. But why do I still have to live in her shadow? Why can't you accept the fact that she never loved you and finally look at me?" Cindy complained bitterly. Being constantly reminded of the fact that Alyssa left him only made him angrier. He didn't want to say things that he would end up regretting, so he walked away, leaving Cindy to bawl her eyes out pain, sadness, and anger. That night, Ezekiel drank alone, returning to an empty home where he instinctively waited for Alyssa to care for him as always. When she didn't appear, he was jolted by the realization of their divorce 5 years earlier. The quietness of the house deepened his loneliness, filling him with a sense of isolation he had never felt before. "Why don't you get yourself a girlfriend even though you haven't found your mate? At least if you have one, you wouldn't have to visit us occasionally." Lily argued after finding out about his intentions of traveling to Grim Hunter's pack. Alyssa listened inattentively as they argued amongst themselves, as she was already used to their constant bickering, but her ears perked up the moment she heard Louis accidentally mention something about Ezekiel. "You think I don't wish to have a girlfriend? It's a mess here, you know. Since Ezekiel doesn't have a Luna yet, getting a girlfriend would seem unacceptable." Louis answered unknowingly. It wasn't what she had expected to happen after their separation, and that only piqued her interest. Lily paused and stared at Alyssa to see if she had any reaction to what Louis had just said, but she just stared down silently like she was deep in thoughts. With a nervous chuckle, "What are you even saying?" she asked as she tried to change the subject, but Louis couldn't get the signal. Ever since Alyssa left, Ezekiel has totally changed from who he used to be. It's worse now that he started drinking heavily. Me having a girlfriend would be like adding more pain to the one he already has. I can. His words were cut short when Lily suddenly turned the phone's camera to face Alyssa. He was saying too much, and Lily had to do something to stop him, as he wasn't getting the numerous stop signals she had been showing him. Louis, realizing what had just happened, slapped his hands against his lips nervously. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her while Lily just rolled her eyes at him. "We'll continue this conversation later. Goodbye," Lily said and ended the call before he could reply. Lily took in a deep breath and walked closer to Alyssa. "I'm so sorry you had to hear that," she said to her. Alyssa smiled brightly and turned back to what she was doing. "It isn't something you have to be sorry about. One way or the other, I'll still have to hear something about him," Alyssa answered. "But I'm fine, Lily," Alyssa assured, cutting Lily off. Lily took a long gaze at Alyssa before nodding in understanding. "If you say so." "Yeah, there are new customers coming in. Don't you have to attend to them?" Alyssa asked as she stared outside the kitchen. "I'll go take their orders then," Lily answered as she left to serve the customers. After she was gone, Alyssa finally had some alone time to think about what she had just heard. She had thought that Ezekiel and Cindy would finally tie the knot now that she was out of the way. Isn't that what they have always been aiming for? She could still hear Cindy's words ringing in her ears, the same words that made her leave without looking back. And now he's drinking heavily, something he hardly do before. What happened between them? They had so much affection then. What changed that? Alyssa had so many questions, but no one to answer them. What am I even doing? She asked herself, suddenly putting a pause to her numerous thoughts. She was done with Ezekiel, his lover, and everything that was going on between them. Whatever happens in their life is none of her business, so she had to stop thinking about them and face her own life. With that thought in mind, she poured all of her focus on the pastry she was crafting, and it was enough to distract her from things she didn't want to think about. A few days later, Alyssa was at the park with Aiden. It was their normal ritual every weekend. She wanted him to live the most normal life possible, so acting like the child that he is was the first step. She watched as he played happily with other kids his age. She decided to go get something for him to drink, but she didn't expect to see him talking to a stranger when she got back. Filled with anxiety, she walked over to where he was. "Aiden?" She called out when she got close. Aiden ran towards her and she immediately hovered over him protectively like a mother hawk. She was about to ask the stranger who he was when he turned around to stare at her. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw who it was. Louis. She called out, changing from her initial protective stance. "Alyssa, I didn't expect to see you here," he answered. "Me neither. What are you doing here?" Alyssa asked. "I'm here for business this time and also to visit," he answered as a wide smile stretched on his handsome face. Since leaving Moonstone Keeper's pack, she never expected to reconnect with anyone that was closely related to her past. Anyone except Louis, since he always come to visit his sister. Anytime he does, he doesn't fail to express his feelings to her, leaving her both amused and exasperated. Even though she was done with Ezekiel, dating his friend wasn't really ideal to her. She didn't want anything or anyone to constantly remind her of her last with Ezekiel, and she didn't want his rage on Louis. From their meeting at the park, Louis frequently showed up in Alyssa's life under the guise that he wanted to see his sister. Alyssa understood what he was doing, but she chose to act like she didn't, as always. He helped her through many of her challenges and used his connections to introduce her to suppliers and partners whenever her dessert shop was facing difficulties. He also never failed to keep Aiden's company whenever Alyssa and Lily were busy, as he knew the only way to Alyssa's heart was through her son. He figured if Aiden liked him, getting Alyssa to date him wouldn't be hard. He bought him toys and told him stories from his traveling adventures whenever he got the chance. It got to the extent that even little Aiden could see what he was doing. One faithful day, Lily and Alyssa were busy with the restaurant, so Louis took it upon himself to go pick Aiden from school. Aiden rushed into the kitchen immediately to go see his mother while Louis followed closely behind him. He stood at the kitchen's door and watched in awe as Alyssa was so focused on what she was doing. At that moment, it felt like the whole world had stopped, and she as the only one he could see. "You look so gorgeous with your hair tied," he uttered without thinking, his eyes not leaving her. Alyssa turned to stare at him, and a small smile appeared on her face. The same smile that never fails to make him weak in the knees. "Leave, you're distracting me," she told him playfully. "No wonder your desserts are so good. They are as irresistible as you are," he said again, making Alyssa halt what she was doing. Aiden, who had been listening to their conversation the whole time, suddenly opened his mouth to ask, "Are you trying to woo my mom, Uncle Louis?" Aiden, who had been listening to their conversation the whole time, suddenly opened his mouth to ask, "Are you trying to woo my mom, Uncle Louis?" he asked as he blinked innocently. Both Alyssa and Louis stared at him in shock, not expecting such a question from him. Even though he sounded innocent, such a question was too mature to come from a child like him. Shock wasn't the only emotion Louis was feeling. He could feel his face slowly get hot, and a deep shade of pink found its way to his cheeks. When Alyssa noticed how shy and uncomfortable he seemed, she decided to come to his aid. "Louis isn't trying to woo Mommy, Aiden. He is just a really good friend of mine, right?" she asked, as she stared at him, hoping that he would confirm her statement so the awkward situation would end. Louis felt like he was under the spotlight as both mother and son stared deeply at him. He was tempted to agree with Alyssa, but he just couldn't stay that way anymore. Even though she keeps acting oblivious to his feelings, he still wanted her to see how sincere he is. Maybe that way she would finally accept him. "Yes, Aiden," he muttered with a small nod, while Alyssa sighed a little in relief. His long silence had made her think he was going to confess to her right there. "I'm trying to woo your mom," he added, making Alyssa nervous again. Why wouldn't he understand? "What do you think, Aiden? Should I go ahead?" Louis asked as crouched close to where Aiden sat. Aiden smiled and stared at his nervous-stricken mom before turning back to face Louis. "No," he muttered. "No?" Louis asked. He was taken aback by Aiden's answer. "No. My mom is mine alone, so there's no chance for you to woo her," he answered in a cute way. His adorable declaration made everyone burst into laughter. Within a few moments, the awkward air in the room has changed into a more lively one. Louis wanted to stay more, but he had something important to do elsewhere, so he left. Alyssa decided to discuss with Lily about the situation. She knew Louis wasn't going to hold back after today. She wasn't ready for a relationship, and she didn't want to hurt them in any way after all of the help they've rendered to her. "Do you have any feelings for him?" was the first question Lily asked after she heard about what had happened earlier today. "I don't," Alyssa answered as she shook her head. "Not once did you have any feelings for him?" Lily asked again. She just wanted to make sure before they take the next step. "Even if I tried to at least see him in a different light, my mate bond with Ezekiel remains unbroken, so it's hard for me to open my heart to someone else," Alyssa explained, and Lily nodded in understanding. "So what am I going to do now, Lily? I can't date him, and I don't want to break his heart. That's the reason I've been acting oblivious all this while." Alyssa was faced with a dilemma. Whatever step she took wasn't going to end well. Lily sighed and sat close to her. "I understand you. As his sister, I would want you to forget about what you think you feel and just date him because he loves you so much," she muttered. "So I should just accept his advances?" Alyssa asked uncomfortably. "No, because as your best friend, I would want you to be honest with yourself and to him. He might be hurt, but he will eventually get over it. The pain of being rejected will be lesser than the pain of being led on." Lily answered, "You're right. I need to reject him straight up so he would be able to heal from the pain fast." "Good. When do you plan to do it?" she asked. "Tomorrow. When he comes, I'll let him know where I stand," Alyssa answered while Lily nodded in agreement. The next day. All through the time the shop was opened, Louis didn't visit them as usual. Alyssa thought maybe he had something important to do, so she decided to wait. It was already in the evening when Louis arrived. At that time, Alyssa had already closed the shop. A smile appeared on Louis's face when he saw Alyssa standing in front of her, already closed shop, like she was waiting for someone. "Alyssa," he called happily as he walked towards her. "You're late today," Alyssa muttered as she smiled a little at him. "Yeah, I had something to do. Were you waiting for me?" he asked, even though he knew she was going to say no. "Yes, I was," she answered, making him stunned. He felt his insides bubble with joy. Even though it meant nothing, that little action meant the whole world to him. "Why?" he stuttered out, unable to hide his happiness. "I have something to tell you," she answered. "I do have something to tell you, too, but you go first," he said. Alyssa took in a deep breath, knowing her words today was going to shatter him. "Thank you for all the help you've rendered to me all this while," she muttered. "All of a sudden, you don't need to thank me because—" "I'm sorry, but I can't accept you advances," she added, cutting him off halfway. "What?" Louis felt deep pain in his heart as he listened to her reject him. "I can't reciprocate your feelings and I don't want to lead you on," she explained. "It's fine. I don't care if you don't have feelings for me. It won't stop the one I have for you." It hurt, he just couldn't let go. "Louis?" Alyssa called out in a pleading tone. "No? I've waited 5 years and I don't mind waiting more. I'm sure you'll come to love me when you see how sincere I am," he added. Just then, Lily appeared and wrapped her hand around Alyssa's waist and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. With a playful smile, she hinted for Alyssa to play along. "You should stop now, Louis. Alyssa is already in love with someone else," she said. Louis saw provocative they looked but still couldn't believe his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked, filled with doubt. "I meant that we are a couple." Lily's words shocked Louis to the core. "Is this true?" he asked Alyssa, still unable to believe what was going on. Alyssa was hesitant at first. She then nodded at his words and joined in Lily's act of pretending that they were romantically involved. I understand then," he stuttered, painfully. His eyes quivered. It looked like he would cry at any moment. Alyssa stared at him in pity as he left in a heartbroken state. "Do you think he will be all right?" she asked Lily as she watched him drive off. "Don't worry, he'll heal from this," Lily answered. But that didn't stop Alyssa from feeling guilty for lying and breaking his heart. It's been days since Ezekiel had that intense argument with Cindy. Since then, he avoided her completely. He was too frustrated and exhausted to engage in another argument with her. 5 years ago, under the compulsion of his wolf, he signed the divorce papers that Alyssa had sent him, and he also cut off her access to all of the credit cards she owned, the ones that he gave her. He thought that financially distancing her would make her come back to her senses, and then she would return back to him. That was just his wishful thinking, as 5 years had passed, and he hadn't seen even her shadow. Even the wolf trackers he had sent to find her had no trace of her, like though she had completely disappeared from the earth. He was slowly losing hope of ever seeing her again. He couldn't deal with the pain and intense longing for her, so he buried himself with work, hoping it would keep him busy and numb the pain he was feeling. He couldn't bring himself to return to the home they lived together. Every corner of the house reminded him of her. The couch, the kitchen, even the paintings on the walls held memories of her. He could still recall how bright her beautiful eyes would shine any time he returned home from work when they initially got married. He never really enjoyed coming back home then because to him, she had ruined all of his life's plans. Over the years, those bright and beautiful eyes slowly went dull. It was replaced with pain and sorrow. He couldn't care less at the time because he wanted her to feel great pain for being his mate. Now, there was nothing for him to return to. No bright eyes, bright smile, warm atmosphere, her warm touch, the sweet scent of the delicious delicacies she makes for him every day. Their continuous bickering, well, mostly from him, because Alyssa hardly ever fought with him. It was just the time she was about leaving him when she finally decided to pour out every pain and emotions she's been holding back. He thought of her cold and dull eyes that had slowly replaced her bright and beautiful ones. He missed those two. The memories drove his wolf restless and agitated, the pain of separation gnawing at his sanity day by day. Later that evening, Ezekiel was in his office, engaging in his usual routine, which was drowning himself in work so as to distract himself from his reality, when he suddenly got a call from Louis. "Hello," he called out the moment he picked the call. "Zeke, how are you?" Louis asked, trying so hard to sound cheerful, but Ezekiel could see through it. Ezekiel and Louis have been close friends since middle school. They did everything together and helped each other whenever they got into problems. Louis was the only reason Ezekiel tried to overlook Lily constantly meddling in his and Alyssa's lives. If not for him, she would have received a punishment much worse than the one he gave her when she physically attacked Lily 5 years ago. "Just same as always," Ezekiel answered in a curt manner. Even though it was obvious that Louis was going through something, he didn't bother asking because to him, the issues he had is far greater than any Louis would ever have. "All right, are you free to drink with me tonight?" Louis suddenly asked. Louis had always been trying to stop Ezekiel from drinking, so him offering now surprises Ezekiel. "I thought you traveled for business." "I did. I just returned. So, will you join me?" Louis asked again. Ezekiel went silent immediately as he thought of the answer to give. He was reluctant at first, but then he relented. He was still going to drink even though he was alone. It was already an habit of his. Instead of doing it alone and having hallucinations about her, thereby making him feel more lonely, he would rather do it with someone. At least that way, his longing for a kissa would be dulled down, even though it was for a short moment. "Sure," Ezekiel answered as he rubbed his temples tiredly. "All right then, I'll be expecting you later," Louis muttered before ending the call. Later that night, Louis, who was already drunk, couldn't hold back his emotions anymore, so he opened up about his problems. "She rejected me," he muttered sadly. "What?" Ezekiel asked in confusion. He didn't know Louis had a love interest. For his and Alyssa's sake, Louis never mentioned it to him. "She didn't even wait for me to officially ask her out. Worst of all, she's in love with someone else now." Louis complained bitterly. He never expected something like that to happen. He should have known Alyssa and Lily have always been so close. Even though they weren't interested in their sexes, feelings were bound to appear. He should have seen the signs earlier. Maybe then, it wouldn't hurt nor disappoint him this much. Learning about Louis' failed romance put Ezekiel in an oddly good mood. At least he wasn't the only one suffering the pain of being heartbroken. "So you intend to give up on her?" Ezekiel asked. "I wanted to keep pushing and wait for her to love me back, but it's too late already, as she already has feelings for someone else," Louis answered as he a large gulp of his alcohol. "Wow, I would never have such thought. I would never give up on someone I love, no matter what happens," Ezekiel answered. "Weren't you the same person that signed the divorce papers 5 years ago?" Louis blurted out without thinking. When he realized what he had just said, he slapped his hands over his mouth in shock and turned his eyes to Ezekiel. Ezekiel was obviously taken aback by his statement, but he quickly covered it with a small smile. "You're right. I signed those divorce papers, but that isn't the end of us. I plan to do everything in my power to bring her back, and now that her voice is healed, I'll make sure she takes up the role of being my Luna." Ezekiel uttered in a moment of rare openness. A wave of panic hit Louis upon hearing Ezekiel's plan, and that was enough to wash off the alcohol from his system. He thought that Ezekiel had finally decided to stop looking for Alyssa, since he couldn't find her. He looked more determined now than ever did. What if he finds her now? What would he do to her? Even though he was drunk, Ezekiel could still notice Louis' sudden change in emotion. His instincts told him that Alyssa was still with Lily, and Louis obviously knows something that he doesn't. "You know where Alyssa is," he uttered all of a sudden. Louis was startled by his sudden question. He tried to deny it, but it ended up making Ezekiel more suspicious. Suppressing his anger. "Where is she?" he questioned forcefully. "I don't know what you're talking about." Louis denied again, when with more confidence than the first time. "So you want to play it the hard way? All right then, just so you know, if I find out that I'm right and your sister is still with Alyssa, I'll make sure she suffers dearly for taking my mate away from me. You of all people know what I can do." he threatened, not caring that Luis was his best friend. Luis's face turned pale white upon hearing his threats. He knew what Ezekiel could do, and he didn't want his sister to suffer, so he had no choice but to give out what Ezekiel wanted. She resides at Grimhunter's pack, Luis muttered reluctantly. A wide smile grew on Ezekiel's face upon hearing that information. He had been searching for his runaway mate for 5 long years, and now this is the closest he had gone to finding her. Filled with nothing but determination in his heart, Ezekiel set his mind on one goal: finding her again. "Do you think he will be all right?" she asked Lily as she watched him drive off. "Don't worry, he'll heal from this," Lily answered, but that didn't stop Alyssa from feeling guilty for lying and breaking his heart. "Did we have to go that far?" she asked Lily again, referring to them lying about being in a relationship. "If we hadn't, your rejection would have been for nothing. I know my brother. You just rejecting him wasn't going to stop him," Lily explained. "I see that now." Alyssa muttered with a small nod. "But I would still prefer you give me a heads up anytime you want to do something as bizarre as this," Alyssa added. "And miss the hilarious look on your face? Hell no!" Lily answered with a chuckle, and that made Alyssa laugh also, slowly easing her from the guilt she was feeling. On their way home, Alyssa and Lily laughed, with Lily's playfulness lifting Alyssa's spirits. They tucked Aiden into bed that night, and Alyssa went to bed with a smile on her face, feeling grateful for a friend as loyal as Lily. Days later. As expected, Louis left Grimhunter's pack immediately, as he couldn't handle the rejection, coupled with the fact that the woman he loved was in a relationship with his sister. Even though she had broken his heart, Alyssa felt at ease, as the pressure of having to love him back wasn't there anymore. "Thank you so much, Lily, for your help." She couldn't help but show her gratitude. "It's fine. I didn't want you tangled up with my brother just because we are best friends. I want you to find whatever makes you happy, whomever, or wherever it might be," Lily assured. Alyssa felt a warm feeling in her heart upon hearing Lily's kind words. What did she ever do to deserve such a good friend who genuinely cared for her to the extent of deserting her own pack and hurting her brother? She was so grateful for everything Lily had sacrificed for her, and she felt that she owed Lily a great deal for the past 5 years. "How would I ever repay you for everything you've done for me?" Alyssa asked Lily. "I told you already. It's fine. We are best friends, and I'm sure you'd do the same thing for me, even more," Lily muttered. "But if you're really hell-bent on paying me back, how about we go out on a date tomorrow?" Lily offered. "Sure," Alyssa agreed without much thought. Later that evening, after they closed the shop, Alyssa, Aiden, and Lily walked home together like they've always done since the shop wasn't far from where they lived. They took their bath, ate dinner together, and Alyssa took Aiden to bed. She read him his usual bedtime so it would be easier for him to fall asleep, but unlike usual, he wasn't easily captivated by it. "Mommy," he called out, and Alyssa stopped reading out the story to him immediately. "Yes, baby," she answered as she turned her attention towards him. "What's your relationship with Uncle Louis?" he asked all of a sudden. Alyssa was surprised at his sudden question, but she figured out she needed to explain the situation to him. "Like I said before, there's nothing going on between the both of us. We are just friends, ready good friends," she explained. "But he likes you," he muttered in his childish voice. "But Mommy doesn't like him back. I've clarified that to Uncle Louis," she muttered with a small sigh as she recalled what happened that day. "Okay," Aiden muttered as he turned his attention to the decorated ceiling. "Why? Did you want him as your father? Do you wish to have a father like the rest of your mates?" Alyssa asked gently when she noticed his reaction. "No," he muttered as he shook his head vehemently. "I just want you to be happy, Mommy," he added as she snuggled into Alyssa's arms. Alyssa chuckled softly and hugged him back. She laid next to him on his bed and continued reading the story to him while he listened with rapt attention this time. Listening to her soothing voice, he gradually drifted off to sleep. When she realized that he was already asleep, she stopped reading the story to him and gently stood up from the bed before arranging the duvet well on his body, She pecked him softly on the forehead before she tiptoed out of the room. She went to her room to have a good night's sleep when she heard her wolf's voice. "Why don't you tell Aiden about his father's existence?" Her wolf, who had been listening to the conversation between her and Aiden, asked. That question brought back memories. Memories of Aiden as a little boy, yearning for a father while other kids were being lifted high in the pack or seeing dads at daycare events. As he grew older, he stopped bringing it up as much as he used to, but Alyssa knew deep down that he still longed for a father figure. She sighed, uncertain if she should let Ezekiel know about his child. But then she recalled all the pain he had caused her when they were still together. How he occasionally told her that he would never accept any child from her, and how he made her lose the first pregnancy. Those memories only hardened her. She felt that Ezekiel had no right to be a father to her son. But then again, didn't Aiden have a right to know who his father was? Ultimately, she couldn't decide which was the best choice to make. She decided to sleep and forget about her problems for the meantime. The next day, Alyssa was busy at the shop when she suddenly caught a familiar scent, a scent that used to be what she woke up to occasionally 5 years ago. Her heart immediately skipped a beat and the hair on her body rose. She was nervous and afraid. He's here. There's no way she was mistaken, because even though they weren't together anymore, she could never forget his unique scent. She froze on her spot and scanned the room anxiously. Then her eyes met with his hooded ones. His tall figure appeared at the shop's door. "Finally, I found you, Alyssa," he muttered. After forcing out Alyssa's location from Louis, Ezekiel felt a surge of possessiveness spark in him. He couldn't wait to finally be able to see her, as he had been doing that for the past 5 years. He ignored everything else he was supposed to do, including his alpha duties and the ones he had at his company, and set off with one mission in mind: to bring his mate back. As he drove to Grimhunter's pack, a swirl of emotions hit him. He felt anger, yearning, and lingering sting of her leaving him. Part of him resented her for leaving without even considering how he felt, while the other part couldn't wait to see her again. His wolf wasn't left out. At the thought of finally meeting their mate, his wolf couldn't stay still and kept urging him to drive faster. For the first time in a long time, Ezekiel listened to his wolf and increased the speed of the car. Gosh! Ezekiel stared at the dessert shop in front of him, wondering if this was the right location or if Louis had gave him the wrong address. He dared not, because he knew what Ezekiel would do if he found out he had been fooled. He watched from inside his car that was parked opposite the shop. He wanted to be sure she was there first before going in. He didn't wait for a long time before he saw her through the shop's large glass window. "Mate," his wolf uttered happily. Ezekiel was taken aback as he watched her serve the customers. There was something different about how she looked and carried herself. She had totally transformed from the Alyssa he once knew. She was no longer dependent on him or anyone else. She looked self-assured, radiant, and more captivating than ever. She wasn't the same Alyssa that once leaned on him. She had grown independent now that she wasn't with him anymore. That reality made his chest tighten as he felt both heartbreak and a strange awe. He had hoped that she would also suffer the same way he did during their separation. He was wrong. Clearly, she had moved on already, while he was left to relive the pain of their separation every day of his life. His fist on the steering wheel were clenched, and he burned with fury as he watched her smiling happily from ear to ear. He was going to make her lay for leaving him and making him suffer all these years. Now is not the time to be thinking about that. We need to get our mate back before she runs away again. His wolf urged as he couldn't bear to watch her from afar anymore. Hearing that, Ezekiel got down from his car and walked towards the shop without taking his eye away from Alyssa. He couldn't let his mate slip away from him again. He got to the shop's entrance and was about to step in when his gaze caught a small figure, a little boy about 4 or 5 years of age, who ran to Alyssa's side and tugged at her clothes. "Mom," the child called out to Alyssa while she bent down to his level and gently patted his head, her voice filled with warmth as she talked to him. Ezekiel was visibly taken aback when he saw the scene in front of him. "Alyssa has a child?" How come? She wasn't pregnant when she left. Or was she impregnated by someone else immediately she left him? He felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured all over him when that thought crossed his mind. He had been suffering for the last 5 years, while she already had a child for someone else. He was burning with rage and was about to confront her with that same anger when the boy turned and he could finally see his little face. He felt it instantly. That was his child. The blood connection was unmistakable. He looked like a miniature version of him. Ezekiel froze on his spot, his heart skipping a bit. He never imagined he had a child, nor that Alyssa had borne this burden alone. He couldn't contain his excitement anymore. He had an heir. He knew deep down that the child was his, but he still wanted confirmation from Alyssa. With that thought, he entered the shop. She froze on her spot and scanned the room anxiously. Then her eyes met with his hooded ones. His tall figure appeared at the shop's door. "Finally, I've found you, Alyssa," he muttered. Being confronted by Ezekiel's sudden appearance, Alyssa was overwhelmed both anxiety and fear. Her wolf danced happily within her. That was a natural reaction as she had been found by her mate, but being happy was the last emotion to be felt by Alyssa. What was he doing here? How did he suddenly find her when she's been doing well by herself for the past 5 years? Does he know about Aiden? She asked herself as she glanced at her son in fear. Ezekiel took a step towards her and she instinctively took 3 steps back, also shielding Aiden behind her with her body. Sensing his mother's unease, Aiden stood protectively in front of her, like his little body could be of help. Ezekiel's sharp gaze swept over her and the little boy in front of him, and he slowly advanced towards them, his presence suffocating. "I have been searching for you for a long time," he muttered softly, but that didn't shake off the fear on her face. It hurt him that his mate, who was supposed to be dependent on him, feared him, but he held his emotions in check. His first priority was bringing her back to her rightful position. "You need to come back to Moonstone Pack with me, you and our son," he demanded. Upon hearing the last part of his demands, Alyssa's heart skipped a bit. He already knows about her child. What was he going to do now? Take him away from her? Her fears increased at that thought, so she picked Aiden up and ran into the kitchen with him. Lily was inside, washing the dishes, when Alyssa suddenly rushed in with Aiden, her eyes filled with fear and anxiety. She wanted to ask what was wrong when she saw Ezekiel following closely behind her. She immediately understood what was going on and stood in front of Ezekiel, stopping him from following Alyssa. "What are you doing here?" she berated. This gave Alyssa a glimmer of courage, but she still stayed away from Ezekiel's piercing gaze as it scared her. Seeing her there, Ezekiel's demeanor grew even more intimidating. She was the reason his mate left him, and she still had the guts to disrespect him right to his face by being in a relationship with her. He was done trying to consider his friend's feelings and overlook Lily's antics. No one was going to stand in the way of getting his family back. He was going to make sure of that. "What are you doing here?" she berated. This gave Alyssa a glimmer of courage, but she still stayed away from Ezekiel's piercing gaze as it scared her. "You really have no fear," Ezekiel muttered as he eyed her angrily. "She obviously doesn't want you here, so why don't you stop pestering her and leave?" Lily asked as she took a protective stance, and that only infuriated Ezekiel the more. A mere wolf like her was stopping him from getting to his family. What right did she have? "Why should I leave when my wife and child are here?" Ezekiel asked back. "Your wife and child?" Lily asked as she laughed out. "The both of you are already divorced. You signed the divorce papers, so there's nothing connecting you to her anymore. She doesn't want you, so leave." Lily screamed out at the top of her voice, but that didn't seem to faze him. "You have a lot of guts to be talking to your alpha in such a manner." "None," Ezekiel muttered in a threatening manner, but it didn't seem to get to Lily. "I bet you wouldn't still have this fearless act you're putting on when I report you to the Alpha Council for abducting and forcing another pack's Luna to stay," Ezekiel threatened. Upon hearing his words, Alyssa became angry. He knew she wasn't abducted nor forced to leave with Lily. He still hadn't changed from the man he used to be, always believing what he wanted to despite seeing and knowing the truth. Akisa put Aiden down and stepped forward. I wasn't abducted, and you know that. We are divorced, and I don't want anything to do with you anymore, so just leave us alone." She muttered as calm as possible, hoping her words would get to him. Ezekiel's eyes darkened instead, and he stepped closer to her, making him look even more menacing. "There are many ways to make you return with me, and you of all people know what I can do," he threatened coldly as he took a small glace at Lily. Lily noticed the instant change in Alyssa's emotion and immediately realized that he had just threatened her with something that he knew would make her have a change of heart. She pulled Alyssa back and stood in front of Ezekiel again. "You have no right," she said, even though she didn't know he was using her as leverage. Ezekiel just smiled as he realized he had gotten to Alyssa. Alyssa knew he meant it when he motioned to Lily. She recalled what he did to Lily the last time, and that made her waver for a moment. Just then, Aiden, who had been silently watching the drama in front of him unfold, decided to step in when he saw how scared his mother looked. "You need to leave," he uttered in his tiny voice. "I don't care if you're my father. My mom doesn't want you, so stop pestering us," he added. Ezekiel was visibly taken aback by his own son's open rejection. He wasn't expecting that. Just then, his phone vibrated in his pockets, pulling him out of the shocked state he was in. He pulled out his phone from his pocket and saw that it was Emma, who had texted to inform him that Cindy had gotten into an accident and urged him to come quickly. Seeing the text, he became worried and prepared to leave, almost forgetting what he had came here for. He was about exiting when he remembered. "Don't try to escape again because I'll still find you," he warned before he left. After he drove off, Alyssa released the breath she had been holding. She was glad that he had finally left, but she could still feel her heart break a little. He still hadn't changed at all. She could never forget that look in his eyes when he left. Only one person can make him look that anxious, and it was Cindy. If he's still with her, why is he forcing her back? Why can't he just be with the one he truly loves and stop pestering others? Later that evening, they had already closed the shop and were currently at home. Alyssa decided to discuss her next step with Lily, as she was already deeply involved now. "Why don't we move?" Lily suggested when Alyssa asked what decision to take. Alyssa found the idea ideal, but then she knew she couldn't keep running. It was only a matter of time before Ezekiel would catch up with her again, just like Toady, and moving all the time wasn't good for a growing child. Suddenly, Lily's phone rang, interrupting their discussion. It was Louis. The first thing he did after answering the call was to ask about their well-being, and that made Lily suspicious. "Were you the one that told him?" Lily asked, going straight to the point. With a small sigh, "I'm so sorry." He apologized. "What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that?" Lily asked angrily. "I was threatened," he defended. "And so? Couldn't you deny it? Do you have any idea of the problem you've caused now?" Lily asked, her voice laced with disappointment. "I'm so sorry," he muttered again, realizing she was right. He should have denied knowing about her whereabouts. "Your action was very reckless. You've endangered Alyssa's and Aiden's life," Lily muttered, filled with guilt. "I promise to do whatever it takes to make things right. Once again, I'm sorry." He apologized. That night, Alyssa and Aiden sat by the window. She decided to have an heart-to-heart talk with him. He already knew who his father was, but he doesn't really understand why she would react that way to him. "You saw what happened earlier, right?" she asked, and Aiden nodded a little. "I'm so sorry you had to witness that." She apologized sincerely. "It's fine, Mommy. It wasn't your fault," Aiden replied softly, and Alyssa smiled a bit. "I'm sorry, but Mommy and Daddy aren't in a good situation." "I know. Isn't that the reason we lived separately?" he asked, and she nodded. She couldn't go into all of the details to him now, as he was just a child. She could only explain to his understanding. "The reason we are like this is because Dad hurt Mommy," Alyssa muttered. "He did?" Aiden asked as he suddenly stood up from his sitting position. "He did, but not physically. He broke Mommy's heart," she explained. "Physically or not, he shouldn't have done that. We aren't supposed to hurt others, as it isn't a good thing to do," Aiden muttered. "You're right. Since I couldn't take the pain anymore, I left," she added. "You made the right decision, Mommy," Aiden supported. But you weren't able to have a father figure in your life. It doesn't matter. If he hurt you, he can't be my father. You're more than enough for me, he said to her. Upon hearing his assuring words, Alyssa couldn't hold back her emotions. You're crying? Aiden asked in surprise when he saw the tears run down her face. These are tears of joy. I'm so glad to have you as my son, she muttered as she sniffed. Aiden smiled and wrapped his small hands around her, engaging her in a warm hug. Me too, Mommy. I'm so glad to have you as my mother, he muttered as he snuggled closer to her. He couldn't bear to see his beloved mother in pain. He would rather get into fights at daycare, defending his fatherless status, than accept a dad that might hurt his mom. After putting Aiden to sleep, Alyssa's wolf decided to engage her in a conversation once again concerning the events that had happened earlier that day. You need to go back to Moonstone Keeper's pack, her wolf uttered, with a small eye roll. Even though you weren't around at the time, you know the reason I don't want to go back, as we share the same memories. Why do you keep urging me to? Do you miss your mate that much? Alyssa asked, not able to forget how giddy her wolf felt when she laid eyes on Ezekiel. This isn't about me or you. You know we aren't the only ones involved in this now. What about Aiden? Her wolf asked back. Alyssa knew what she was about to say, but still decided to play dumb as she didn't want that conversation. What about him? She asked with a tired sigh. You know he's the one that's most affected in this situation. Even though you've tried your best to feel the void in him, he still needs a father figure in his life. Also, running would do us no good, especially Aiden, who's still a child. Besides, no pack would want to take us in under Ezekiel's threat. It's only a matter of time before we are chased away from this pack, her wolf reminded. Alyssa thought deeply about her wolf's words and realized that she was right. She can't spend the rest of her life running away. She thought about Aiden and couldn't help but feel guilty. She had overlooked his experience with bullying. Even though the bullying wasn't done physically, it still hurt him as he was a child. She needs to put him first before she does anything. After thinking for a while, she made a decision. Even though he wasn't fit to be a father and she loathed him, she had to do this for Aiden's future. She picked up her phone and unblocked Ezekiel's number. She never for once changed her number. She only blocked the people she once knew so they wouldn't be able to reach her. After doing that, she sent Ezekiel a text message. I will return back with Aiden as long as you agree not to interfere with our lives. She typed and sent it. Within seconds, Ezekiel sent a reply. His response was icy and not something she had expected. I just want my son. We'll arrange Aiden's adoption under Cindy and I, and after that, you're to leave. Her breath hitched as she read the message. She realized that his plan was still to make Cindy his Luna, but this time, he wanted to use her child to solidify her claim to the position. She wasn't going to let that happen. She wasn't going to sit and watch them use her child as a tool to get their heart desires. Enraged, she texted back, if that's how it's going to be, I and my son are never going to return to that place. She typed, sent the message, and turned off her phone immediately. Gone are the days she would let them use her the way they want. Now, they want to do the same with her child over her dead body. She wasn't going to allow them harm her baby. On his way back to Moonstone Keeper's pack, Ezekiel was in a heated argument with his wolf. You've spoilt everything now. She doesn't want to return because of you, his wolf uttered. What did I do this time? Ezekiel asked in frustration. Every time he had issues concerning Alyssa, his wolf always blamed him. 5 years of her disappearance has taught you nothing. You still haven't learned how to treat her with respect. She's our mate and now the mother of our child, his wolf reminded. Ezekiel didn't reply, as an image of how Lily defended Alyssa crossed his mind. Louis' words about their relationship had planted seeds of doubt in him, and it changed his mood immediately. No wonder she was living fine without bothering to reach out to him for 5 years. He should have known that wench. Lily was up to something. She was always too close and overly protective of Alyssa. Now that his thoughts of her finding someone else and being in a relationship despite him being her mate had been confirmed, she definitely wasn't going to treat him with love and care the way she used to. As that thought crossed his mind, He was filled with jealousy and anxiety. Ezekiel arrived at the hospital Cindy was admitted into in an irritated and tense state. Thoughts about Alyssa and Lily couldn't leave his mind. He wondered how far they had gone in their relationship. Seeing Cindy laying on the bed, looking far from ill like he had expected, made his mood worsen. "Why did you call me?" he asked Emma angrily. They were currently standing outside the ward so they wouldn't disturb the sleeping Cindy. "Why not? She needed you at the moment." Emma answered with a small shrug. "Really, I don't see anything wrong with her." Ezekiel answered as he glanced at Cindy again to confirm his words. "Just because you don't see it doesn't mean she's fine. She's hurting badly internally." Ezekiel rubbed his temples tiredly upon hearing her words. He knew where she was going with that. "Let's not do this now," he muttered. "It's been 5 years since you divorced Alyssa. It's high time you reconsidered your relationship with Cindy and make her your." Emma reminded. "I don't have to do that because Alyssa's coming back soon." Ezekiel replied coldly, cutting her off halfway. "What?" Emma muttered in shock, but before she could ask more questions, Ezekiel walked into Cindy's ward. Unbeknownst to them, Cindy was awake and had been eavesdropping on their conversation. When she heard that Alyssa would be coming back, she grew anxious and restless. After everything she did to make her leave, she was coming back now that she still hadn't achieved her goal. What if Ezekiel finds out she was the reason Alyssa left in the first place? She couldn't let that happen. Not now. She needed to be his Luna first. But what could she do now that Ezekiel wasn't even planning to get married to her? Overwhelmed with anxiety, she decided to play up her condition. She knew how gullible and easily manipulated Ezekiel was towards her, especially when she was sick. She yawned tiredly like she had just woken up, alerting Ezekiel. Ezekiel immediately rushed to her side in concern. "How are you feeling?" he asked her softly. She stared at him innocently and then faked a groan like she was weak. "I don't feel good," she lied as she placed her hand on her forehead. "Where does it hurt?" he asked again as he scrutinized all over her body like he would be able to tell where the pain was. Seeing him so concerned about her, she decided to use that emotion of his to her advantage like always. "It hurts everywhere." She lied again with an exaggerated display of weakness. She looked fine before, but it suddenly changed the moment she woke up. When she noticed Ezekiel wasn't really convinced, she upped her game and shut her eyes like she was a weak patient. That was enough to convince Ezekiel, in a panicked state, "Let me go get the doctor." He muttered and was about to leave when she stopped him. "He's already attended to me. I just need you now," she muttered. "But, please, Ezekiel, just stay with me today." She pleaded weakly, which ultimately convinced Ezekiel to stay with her. That night, Cindy told him that she was hungry and asked him to fetch her something to eat. Ezekiel wasn't in the right frame of mind as he was still arguing with his wolf, so he left his phone behind by accident. When he returned with the food he had gone to buy, he saw her holding it. Her eyes brightened when she saw him and she placed the phone back where it was. "You have a message. Who's it?" she asked innocently as she motioned to his phone. Ezekiel stared at the message from an unknown sender and immediately knew who it was after he had seen the unsaved number. He knew Alyssa's number by heart. Realizing the message was from her, he tried to conceal his excitement and brushed off the contact. He didn't want Cindy crying to him now. He quickly picked up his phone. "I have hired a nurse that would look after you when I'm gone." He told Cindy and left before she would make him stay longer. Sitting in his car, Ezekiel felt his heart shatter as he read the message Alyssa sent. She had made it firmly clear she wasn't coming back,